When the heroine opened her eyes and saw the man in front of her, she recognized him immediately. Before her stood the idol who visited her dreams so many times, her beloved Kylo. And although the girl is infinitely happy internally about this meeting, her hand, for some reason, she lifts her hand on its own and slaps the man. The body does not obey at all, and now not only the second, but also the third blow lands on Kylo's face. Once, on a social network, the heroine came across a question about what she would do if she entered a novel with her favorite character. There was a prize for the best answer, and the girl wrote about how she would take care of her object of admiration. And although everything looked like this in her dreams, now the heroine, for some reason, behaves completely differently. Kylo grabs her hands, and although deep down she likes it very much, she screams at him not to dare touch her with his dirty hands. The heroine cannot believe that all this is really happening to her, and hopes it is only a dream. With this thought, she loses consciousness and falls into the man's arms. Kylo sighs heavily, holding a spoiled girl in his arms. The worst one, in his opinion, could exist. Princess Agnes Saint can be described in many ways. She is the Emperor's jewel, the queen of high society, the most beautiful girl on the continent, and a time bomb. But in reality, she is now just a princess who drank too much alcohol to celebrate the end of the war, and started to cause a ruckus. Both Agnes and the imperial family that ignores her seem pathetic to Kylo. He asks the guards who approach to quickly take the girl to the palace. For Kylo, all this is unbearably sad, since, whatever happens, he is not in a position to contradict the imperial family. In her room, the protagonist thinks about what to do now, as she believed it was a dream. But it turned out to be real. She slapped her favorite as soon as she reincarnated, and then lost consciousness. All this began when, in that real life, a car hit her and she died. It was incredibly frustrating to die on the way home from a cafe, after celebrating the birthday of her favorite character. On the verge of death, a world goddess appeared to her and told her that there was a system error in the souls, and that it was not yet her time. The girl, without hesitation, asked to be sent back, but it turns out her physical body was lost forever. Still, the goddess took responsibility for what happened and admitted her mistake. So she proposed that the girl continue a new life in the world she desired. According to the goddess, she could be reborn in any world, real or fictional. Faced with such an offer, the heroine did not hesitate for a second and asked to go with her favorite character. Clearly, she should have been more specific, because she only wanted to meet Kylo, not slap him. Approaching the mirror, the young woman realizes that she has an even bigger problem than slapping her beloved. She knows perfectly well to whom that clear lilac silver hair, those violet eyes belong, and that precious face. Of all possible characters, she reincarnated into the worst villain, Agnes Saint. The novel Infinite Ascent narrates the struggle of the protagonist, Raymond Spencer, against demons. It unites fans of different genres, and on social media, they call it the Great Otaku Convergence. Agnes Saint, the heroine of the novel, is a fan obsessed with the protagonist. But to be a fan, she is too hooked on her idol. So much so that, at the end of War Ball, she got drunk and said outrageous things to the knights. She called them parasites who wanted to cut funding for Sir Spencer's reputation. Worse still, Agnes, completely drunk, called the Black Knights pathetic insects. With those words, the girl unleashed a monumental scandal. But just then, Kylo appeared to calm the out-of-control Agnes. He is an ex-mercenary and commander of the Black Knights, as well as an eternal rival of the protagonist, Raymond Spencer. And of course, Kylo Grey is the sworn enemy of Agnes Saint. The man hates Raymond because of his inferiority complex related to his origin. Therefore, in each of their confrontations, he cursed Spencer with all his might. Thanks to this, Agnes and Kylo occupied the top spots on the list of popular villains, who also hate each other fiercely. With all this, the goddess for some reason decided to reincarnate the heroine right into Agnes's body. And everything went wrong from the start. The second day since the girl's rebirth has arrived. Fortunately, in the morning she felt that she was starting to control her new body on her own. The goddess warned that after rebirth, the girl would rapidly live through all the years until the beginning of the novel. As she said, now in the heroine's head, there are memories of Agnes Saint's life. Although there are too many memories, the girl asked to start from scratch. And now, to the surprise of the maids, she is going to meet the commander she embarrassed yesterday. The girl wants to apologize and try, at least in this way, to get closer to Kyle. Misinterpreting Agnes's impulse, the maid begs them not to kill the commander, although he shouldn't have touched her mistress. It is obvious that others only expect cruelty from the princess, but she reassures the maid, saying that she only wants to meet him. As is known, Kyle Gray belongs to the Order of the Black Knights. Initially, in the Empire, there were 4 orders of chivalry. The White Knights are the elite of the elite. All their members possess exceptional skills and status. The Blue Order is composed solely of unsurpassed swordsmen, whose status is not very important. The Order of the Red Knights is made up of mages with extraordinary abilities. The Black Knights are a group of slackers, and although they have incredible skills, you never know what to expect from them. They are called the Hounds of War, biting everyone, and although their reputation is exaggerated, these knights have participated in conquests, threats, violence, and rebellions. Due to the Order's reputation, Kylo was always alone and suffered discrimination. His image reminded the protagonist of her lonely self in school, and that is why she was hopelessly fascinated. The girl used every possible way to promote her favorite, but he was a totally unpopular character. Meanwhile, on the day the first part of the novel ended, a crucial incident occurred. Emperor Alexander Saint was furious, just as they had won the war against the demons. But suddenly, a rift appeared in the city, and monsters managed to infiltrate the settlements. The emperor sought advice from the high priest, and then the temple revealed the whole truth. To solve the problem at its root, they had to get rid of the source of the rift, located on the top of the snowy mountain known as the end of the world. But only a few could destroy the source, and in the empire there were 2, Raymond and Kylo. One had to sacrifice his life, but instead of the protagonist, Kylo volunteered. Reading this, the heroine did not understand why her favorite had gone there. There was only one reason why Kylo, who hated Raymond so much, took the initiative. She understood it upon returning to the capital after the end of the Great War. The people crowded in the square cheered and honored Raymond as a hero. And then, Kylo understood that no matter how much he fought, he would never surpass Spencer or be a hero. He went only to the rift source, sacrificing his life to bring peace back to the Empire. And only dead did he become a hero, ceasing to be an evil spirit. His portrait was published on the novel author's page, and seeing it, the heroine was delighted. After this, Kylo reached the peak of popularity in an instant, and the girl spent days at the cafe opened in his honor. But not only did her favorite character die, but also, by a tragic coincidence, she also coming home from that cafe. And now, reborn in a new body within the same novel, the heroine decides that, from this moment on, everything will be different. She enters Kylo's office, determined to change his future. However, when Agnes opens the door, she becomes a witness to a rather strange scene. A tied-up Kylo is kneeling in the middle of the room, and next to him are the Knights of the White Order holding him. The heroine demands an explanation for what is happening. According to one of the knights, the Chamberlain ordered them to prepare for the princess's arrival. Therefore, they tied up Sir Grey so he couldn't escape or resist. Agnes orders the man to be released immediately and kicks the knights out of her office. She really wanted to treat Kylo kindly, and she doesn't understand why something like this always happens. Suddenly, the heroine hears a male voice behind her, someone willing to pay for touching her yesterday. And when Agnes replies that she does not intend to punish him, he assumes that what she wants is to summarily execute him. Because of this, Kylo asks if she would be satisfied if he strips off his knight's armor. Upon hearing such words, the protagonist's imagination begins to project rather risque scenes. Noticing the disturbance on the girl's face, Grey clarifies that he meant resigning from the knighthood. Agnes fears that now he sees her not only as the villain who slapped him, but also as a pervert. Composing herself, she asks Kylo to pretend nothing happened and forget everything, leaving him completely stunned. The girl is so nervous at that moment that it is impossible for her to even look him in the eye. She would like to tell him many more things, but she understands that the best thing she can do now is walk away. Because if the girl who slapped him yesterday suddenly shows kindness, Kylo might think she has lost her mind. Besides, it is crucial not to rush, but to approach that tender kitten slowly. So, for a while, Agnes will practice her perfect acting to get closer little by little. As she leaves through the door, Kylo gets up, not understanding why the princess came. He was sure she wanted to expel him from the order, but that didn't happen. And now Grey tries to figure out what the villain is plotting this time. Still, he did not expect such a reaction to words spoken without double meaning. Who would have thought that the princess also has a naive side? However, Kylo is pleased because it seems he made fun of her. Days after her encounter with Kylo, Agnes locked herself in the palace, claiming illness. She thought about how to approach her idol after resolving the novel's plot. Following the incident with the rude comments at the ball, Agnes's reputation plummeted. The princess herself offended those who fought for the Empire, risking their lives. No matter how much she tries to get close to Kyle under these circumstances, her reputation will prevent it. Furthermore, that incident that inevitably leads to the end of the original story will happen very soon. Just as the protagonist is trying to sort out her thoughts, someone knocks on the door, and she is summoned before the emperor. The girl promises to go soon, knowing that, according to the novel, they are going to expel her from the palace. The imperial family saint has developed a magical weapon, unique in its class, that allows them to fight demons. This not only brought peace to the continent, but also endowed the family with immense power. And Emperor Alexander Saint thus became the most influential person in the empire. The protagonist enters the audience hall and greets His Majesty. Alexander, an attentive father, looks closely at the eyes of his beloved daughter. He thinks about how difficult and painful this moment must be for Agnes. The emperor knows perfectly well that he cannot protect his daughter forever, but Alexander cannot help it. Seeing his daughter so similar to his late wife, his heart melts. The protagonist looks at the emperor, and, from his expression, understands that he is also not having a good time. But for Agnes, whose reputation has already plummeted, Alexander has devised a solution. Due to the rumors about her in high society, he decided to send her out of the capital so her reputation could recover. Novel readers were delighted with this turn, but now the protagonist cannot allow it, since she wouldn't be able to see Kylo. Therefore, she decides to insist on her position and replies to her father that she does not want to. The young woman knows that the most affectionate father in high society will hardly force his beloved daughter to leave. The emperor wants to know why Agnes rejects this option, because if she doesn't leave, he will have to make another decision. According to the princess, everything is fine with her, except leaving the capital, which she does not want to leave. In reality, she is willing to clean stables, have her dresses confiscated, and jewels, to live in the maid's room and serve in the temple. However, the emperor declares that, in that case, Agnes will be named a mage in the Order of the Black Knights. Seeing the surprised look on his daughter's face, Alexander tries to explain his decision to her, believing that it is hard for her to accept it. But to his surprise, the young woman docilely replies that she is ready to go there right now. Most members of the imperial family, including Agnes, inherit enormous magical power. Therefore, it was always normal for them to join the Order of the White Knights, as Crown Prince and Agnes's older brother Demian did. Initially, the princess also belonged to the Order of the White Knights, but she never went on missions, considering it bothersome. But now she is sent with Kylo, and she begs her father to immediately transfer her to the Order of the Black Knights. Although for the heroine it is the best possible turn, the emperor looks at his daughter perplexed. Believing that something is wrong with Agnes, he decides to call a doctor to begin with. The heroine cannot believe it. Now she has an excuse to see her favorite and bewitch him. The news of the princess's appointment to the Order of the Black Knights spread like wildfire. Some condemned His Majesty's harsh decision. Others fervently supported it. Set apart from the rest, against the wall, are two members of the Order of the White Knights, Sirius Melville and Hugo Rodian. Sirius is astonished by how much people like to talk about others, but Hugo believes that gossiping is customary among the nobility, and that they have some reason. Sirius, tired of hearing the princess spoken of like that, leaves the hall outraged. However, his friend knows well that he only pretends to be a gentleman. In reality, he is a demented pervert. Diana Reynolds, the deputy commander of the White Knights, approaches Hugo to ask about Sirius's whereabouts. Next to her is Hazel Devon, a member of the Order of White Knights and the main candidate for heroine of the novel. Diana is highly amused that Sirius left, saying she doesn't want to hear criticism against Princess Agnes. Although on the other hand, she understands Melville, since she herself is a childhood friend of Crown Prince Demian. According to her, Agnes is Demian's only sister, and, however just the criticisms may be, she would never speak ill of her friend's family. Holy Liliana, the second candidate for heroine of the novel, joins the group of heroes of the White Order. Smiling, the young woman asks what interesting things they are discussing. Upon learning they were talking about Agnes, Liliana confesses that she never thought His Majesty would make such a decision. In the past, Liliana was a commoner, but one morning she received a divine revelation, and she became a saint. The stares fixed on the girl, who had no power or status, never foreshadowed anything good. Contempt, mockery from haughty nobles, and even flirting pursued her ceaselessly. After completely healing several possessed people, Liliana's life took a radical turn. People began to venerate and admire the saint, something unthinkable until then. Having experienced the complete opposite, Liliana began to desire even more. Hugo Rodian, upon seeing the saint, always gets flustered and loses himself. He is her #1 fan, but although he is the heir to a duchy and enjoys a good reputation, Liliana does not consider him her equal. Hugo believes that without Agnes, the order will be quieter and no one will bother the saint anymore. Liliana doesn't care, she says. The princess looked down on her because of her origin. So what? The young woman says this with a calculated expression, seeking to touch the hearts of the men present. Deep down, she is grateful to Agnes for showing her as miserable in front of those naive people. After delighting in male compassion, Lillian notices that Lady Devon should be happier than her. The saint says this with such sarcasm that Diana demands she explain what she means. Lillian does not say it out loud, of course, but she believes there are only 2 men for her, Prince Damien and Sir Raymond Spencer. At that very moment, the commander of the Order of the White Knights himself approaches the group. Lillian mentions that they were talking about Princess Agnes and how safe Sir Devon will feel now. When Raymond asks for an explanation, the saint, looking at Hazel's tense face, smilingly says she shouldn't have mentioned it. She apologizes, claiming she still isn't used to the ways of the nobility. Diana sighs seeing how Lillian trips up Hugo, who falls for it like a fool without realizing anything. Meanwhile, Agnes, the center of all the commotion without knowing it, calmly sips tea with her maid. Daisy Rodian cannot believe that Her Majesty made that decision and sent her daughter to the Order of the Black Knights. The maid fears that that stubborn man, Sir Grey, will torture her mistress. The heroine herself is sure that Kylo will take the opportunity to annoy her, but for some reason, it doesn't seem bad to her. Thinking about it, Agnes blushes so much that Daisy doesn't overlook it. Terrified that the princess is ill, the maid suggests calling a doctor and informing the Emperor. Agnes reassures Daisy, the only maid who is not afraid of her, although sometimes it is exhausting. The princess doubts that that band of slackers can harm her, and anyway, there is almost nothing left to do in the order now, since the war is already won. Under the pretext of a sudden headache, the heroine asks Daisy to leave her alone. The inhabitants of the Empire are still intoxicated by the victory in the war against the demons, unaware that this calm will not last long. However, the heroine knows where and when the demons will appear, and in half a year, she plans to save the people in the eastern region. The girl plans to attribute all the merits to Kylo, telling everyone that salvation was possible thanks to his foresight. As the heroine is enjoying her perfect plan, Demian interrupts her by entering. Unexpected visit from her older brother without prior notice, Agnes is surprised. But Demian, on the other hand, is not surprised by his sister's informal greeting. A little earlier, his father invited him for a walk and confessed his concern about Agnes. Very strange. The doctor says she is fine, but she didn't protest the forbidden balls or the change of order. Alexander didn't understand what was wrong with her, but Demian thought his sister had always been peculiar. The emperor was so restless that he imagined crazy things. The prince had to calm him down. With a sigh, Alexander asked Demian, his only brother, to visit Agnes and evaluate her. Although the prince did not want to do it, he could not oppose his father's will, and that is why he is now standing at the door of his sister's room. With a quick glance, he assesses Agnes's room, but finds nothing strange. Recognizing the young lady from Duke Rodian's family as the maid, the crown prince asks to be left alone with his sister. As he says goodbye to the girl, his face lights up with a bright and kind smile. However, as soon as she leaves, Demian immediately darkens, turning towards Agnes. He dryly asks his sister how much longer she plans to bother His Majesty and tarnish the family's honor. According to him, if Agnes continues to behave so frivolously, she won't be able to find a good husband, even being a princess. Even though her father won't stop loving and spoiling her, she shouldn't expect the same from Demian. From now on, as a mage of the Order of the Black Knights, Agnes must approach missions with full seriousness. Demian demands that his sister answer him, and he is already ready to listen to the screams and usual arguments. However, to his surprise, Agnes replies with complete calm and promises to obey his order with her mission. The shock was such that the crown prince was struck dumb, fixing his gaze on the protagonist. Composing himself, Damien expressed his hope that his sister would not forget her promise. Although the heroine is happy to finally have a family, something she didn't have in her previous life. She is furious with the prince. With others, she is friendly, but when she is with her sister, her face reflects irritation. Of course, Agnes did a lot to deserve that treatment, as she pursued Raymond regardless of her reputation. She didn't fulfill her duties, disappeared at balls, got drunk, and caused scandals and riots. But still, it hurts the girl to hear from her brother that she won't be able to find a good husband. How can Damien have such outdated ideas in an age where airships cross the sky and golems cultivate the fields? The protagonist feels an enormous urge to reach him and tell him everything, but decides to restrain herself, because tomorrow she is finally being transferred to the Order of the Black Knights. The next day, looking at herself in the mirror, Agnes thinks this uniform suits her much better than that of the White Knights. Meanwhile, the maids doubt whether to tell their mistress how good the uniform looks on her. As soon as they manage to decide, Agnes directly asks them for their opinion. The girls are bewildered, fearing that the princess will get angry if they compare her to the Black Knights. But to their surprise, Agnes suddenly declares that she cannot keep doing whatever she pleases forever. According to her, she must show the nobility expected of a member of the imperial family. Dismissing the maids, the protagonist prepares to leave, feeling great. Finally, she will show Kylo her new self. Meanwhile, Jeremy, Sir Grey's assistant, would bet his knight title that the princess won't show up today. Kylo sighs, recalling his conversation with the Emperor a few days ago. His Majesty began the talk by saying that Agnes, as is known, lost her mother as a child and grew up alone. In society, it is rumored that the princess does not fulfill her role as a healer out of selfishness. Nevertheless, according to the Emperor, his daughter is simply very impressionable. She was terrified just by seeing patients with symptoms similar to her mother's, and when her nanny died, she became something like a living dead. The Emperor knows that he is very soft on his daughter, but he cannot help it, although dealing with her is more difficult than the Empire's affairs. After hearing this, Kylo deduced that His Majesty wanted him, as commander, to treat her delicately. However, contradicting this, the Emperor suddenly declared that his daughter cannot live like this forever. He knows that Sir Grey performed excellently on the front and fought against demons. Therefore, he will surely be able to control Agnes and make her feel the bitterness of life. Kylo could not believe that the Emperor ordered him not to make concessions to the princess and to treat her like a subordinate. But His Majesty confirmed it and asked, if possible, that she be seen as just another subordinate, even if it was not to his liking. The order was quite unexpected, but the current Emperor's power is unequaled, absolutely indisputable. And if Kylo manages to fulfill his will, and the princess gets her father's attention, he will be able to humiliate his stepmother, stepbrothers, and all those who scorned him. Furthermore, it is a golden opportunity to get revenge for the princess's scorn, although he greatly doubts she will even show up. However, to the surprise of both men, they are informed of His Highness's arrival at the Order of the Black Knights. When Agnes enters the office, it takes Kylo a moment to assimilate that she is actually there, that she really came. He doubts that the princess fully understands the situation she has gotten herself into. Not a bit. With a mocking smile, Kylo informs her about the Emperor's order not to treat her specially, under no circumstances, as long as she wears the uniform of the Black Knights. And since Agnes came here dressed in the uniform, he wants to know if she is ready to start crawling before him now. But the princess, with her head bowed, replies that she hopes he will forget her previous rudeness, and that he guides her, without differentiating her from the other members of the order. Kylo smiles, believing that Agnes is trying to blatantly flatter him. He signs her appointment order, and now Lady Agnes Saint is officially a member of the Order of the Black Knights. However, something seems strange to Kylo, as he is used to people looking at him with contempt for being a bastard. But in Agnes's gaze, he did not see that contempt. Rather, she looked at him like a plague. No matter how much she fears His Majesty getting rid of her, the princess is not one to give up her pride. But today her behavior is very different from usual, and Kylo cannot understand what she is really thinking. He cannot even imagine that the heroine is actually thinking about how much she likes the sarcasm in his voice. That in reality, at this moment, she admires his beauty, not understanding how his coldness can look so harmonious on his fine features. She admires his broad chest and even his handwriting seems simply perfect to her. But above all, she likes his character, which reminds the heroine of a kitten. Observing Agnes's strange expression, it seems more and more to Kylo that she is plotting something. After thinking about it for a while, he decides to assign the girl her first mission. She will have to restore the outer walls of the capital fortress in District A-15 Oriental, damaged by the war. But before the builders start, the Black Knights must check the area for remaining monsters. And it is precisely there that Agnes will have to go alone. Since she knows how to do nothing other than wear dresses, Kylo wonders how well she will do this job. And Agnes will go there with only a small pistol. The heroine expected to go on the mission with Kylo, but ends up losing her date with him, and tears well up in her eyes, which Gray himself mistakes for fear. Despite everything, Agnes promises to comply with everything and turns to leave the office. Jeremy is worried, wondering if everything will be all right, if the princess is really going alone to that area, and runs into a monster. Kylo smiles and replies that if she gets scared, she will cry and beg His Majesty for help. Gray deliberately did not tell Jeremy that when he visited the detainees in Area A-15. The patrol was already over. In the empty town, from which everyone was evacuated, only buildings touched by the horror of war remained, and the expectation that something might jump out at you hangs in the air. After experiencing this feeling firsthand, the princess will no longer be able to be as rude as before. In reality, if it weren't for the Emperor's order, Kylo wouldn't go so far with a child who has barely reached adulthood. He asks Jeremy not to worry, being himself sure that nothing bad will happen. It turned out that Sirius Melville, who was passing by the office at that moment, overheard all this. He reaches the commander to give him a report, but instead, he shouts from the door that Kylo Gray is completely crazy. Sirius reports that Kylo sent the princess alone to Area A-15, which has not yet been checked. What's more, he checked the weapons depot and made sure Agnes was actually given a small pistol. Raymond does not deny that Kylo caused trouble on the battlefield, wanting all the glory for himself, but he managed to restrain himself and received a light punishment. He does think about the consequences. Raymond does not believe that Kylo is so blinded by power as not to fear the Emperor's wrath. Therefore, all this seems more like a plan to destabilize the princess. Still, Sirius does not rule out the danger, but he cannot investigate, as he must patrol. The commander orders the knight to go on the mission, promising to personally watch over the princess. Alone, Raymond sighs deeply, wondering how many more problems he will have to solve for the princess. When she was transferred to the Order of the Black Knights, he felt relieved not to deal with her nonsense. And yet, Raymond found himself involved on the first day of her transfer. Perhaps this time the real culprit is not Kylo Gray, but Agnes. Raymond was tired of her reckless interest and insistent courtship. Now he is ready for anything just to escape the princess. Meanwhile, the heroine on horseback approaches the site of her first mission. At the same time, Victor Craven, a member of the Order of the Black Knights, enters the commander's office. He reports that it is necessary to return immediately to Area A-15. Horror flashes in Kylo's eyes upon learning that yesterday's round is not over yet. It turns out that a female knight lost her cat during yesterday's round, and they must go back. Kylo jumps up, because if the search doesn't end, the princess could be in danger. Meanwhile, the guards of Area A-15 are surprised to see Her Highness at the door. The heroine explains that she came on the commander's orders to conduct the patrol. From the reaction of the guards, the girl understands that they have obviously already checked everything here. Agnes enters the territory, thinking that it was expected that Kylo would not put her in danger. It seems quite sweet to the protagonist that he resorted to such a low trick just to scare her. However, the place is indeed creepy, although Raymond really put a lot of effort into it. Fortunately, he evacuated the residents in advance, which resulted in few casualties. Thanks to his unparalleled ingenuity, Raymond caught the movement of the demons and calculated his plan, winning almost every battle. What's more, he is young and attractive, and since childhood he has carried in his soul the wound of losing his mother to a demon. They didn't call him a hero in vain, as he was a star worthy of admiration, but because of his brilliance, other knights were forgotten. Unlike Raymond, who was mainly engaged in commanding, Kylo fought personally, but no one appreciates him. To feed his ego, the protagonist decides that she must at least pretend to be scared to death when he returns. Suddenly, among some abandoned barrels next to a house, Agnes spots a dark creature, and mistakes it for a monster. She begins to believe that the area was either not explored at all, or it was done very superficially. While the heroine wonders what to do, the creature jumps out of the darkness and pounces on her. But upon opening her eyes, the girl realizes that it is just a small kitten. Judging by how calm it is in her arms, it is used to people. Perhaps its owner simply couldn't take it with him during the evacuation. Noticing that the kitten is seriously injured, Agnes decides to heal it. Sensing energy in its body, the animal meows thankfully to its savior. Since Agnes was bored doing this patrol which seemed useless to her, she decides to take the kitten with her. And just as she promises to find its owner, the girl feels someone's breath behind her. Turning around, the heroine realizes with horror that it is not a cat, but a real monster. With bright red eyes, the beast attacks Agnes, who cannot believe that another insignificant death awaits her. But before she can even blink, Kylo appears and with a quick movement, wipes out the monster. Blood splashes on the princess's face. Her legs weaken and, losing her balance, she falls to the ground. Kylo asks if the girl is okay, but she cannot answer, mute at the thought that he saved her. Without daring to look her in the eye, Gray confesses that he did not intentionally expose her to danger. It was an error in the report. He extends his handkerchief for her to wipe the blood from her face. The heroine snatches Kylo's handkerchief and presses it against her chest, not thinking about how this might look from the outside. The commander, meanwhile, thinks that Agnes has obviously gone crazy from the scare. In reality, he is glad that the princess is not injured and that he arrived in time to help her. The protagonist internally celebrates this opportunity to be with Kylo, so she suggests continuing to explore the area together. Suddenly, the sound of hooves interrupts the moment. Raymond arrives on horseback. Seeing the blood on Agnes's face and the dead monster, he assumes that Gray has gotten into trouble again. Kylo responds with a silent look, but loaded with contempt for Raymond. The commander of the White Knights offers his handkerchief to the princess, suggesting she clean the blood first. Kylo watches with surprise as the girl wipes her face with Raymond's handkerchief. He draws a wrong conclusion. He thinks Agnes didn't use her handkerchief because she considered it dirty. Raymond offers to take the princess home, as he has already requested a carriage. Enormous disappointment is reflected on Agnes's face due to the situation and Spencer's arrival. But Kylo misunderstands again, believing that the princess is angry about losing the opportunity to be alone with Raymond. Spencer promises Gray that he will fix this matter, but warns him that it must not happen again. According to him, the imperial family must not be an instrument on the battlefield. And with whims, what is desired is not achieved. Kylo is amused that Raymond is going to fix the situation, even though no one asked him to. And he already acts as if he were Agnes's husband. With irony in his voice, he replies that he should listen to the advice of the very hero of the Empire, even if he is too self-confident. Kylo reports that it was the Emperor who tasked him with commanding the princess, and Raymond doesn't need to follow her everywhere like a nanny. Looking sternly at Gray, Spencer advises him to watch his words. But nobody can stop Kylo now, and he asks, why is Raymond hooked on the princess if he constantly rejects her? Without answering a word, the commander of the White Knights turns around and walks away from him. Kylo is irritated by that dirty scum, who only pretends to be a noble knight. However, he perfectly understands that Raymond plans to capture the princess's heart and become the emperor's son-in-law. This man treats him like trash, blinded by power, and he himself is the same. Kylo is sure that one day he will expose Raymond Spencer's dirty plans. The protagonist does not understand why she is in the same carriage with the commander of the White Knights. She had the opportunity to spend time with Kylo, and Raymond ruined everything with his arrival. The girl closely observes the protagonist, whom she meets for the first time after her reincarnation. In reality, he is quite handsome, although he is not her type, mainly because his chest is too narrow. Raymond gives the impression of being a noble who grew up being too perfect, and the protagonist likes wilder and rougher men, like Kylo. Raymond is so perfect that he seems to completely lack humanity. However, so as not to arouse suspicion, the protagonist is forced to pretend she loves him. Everyone knows that Raymond is the most precious jewel to Agnes. No one would believe she would give up her feelings. Spencer, meanwhile, thinks about how to explain his visit to the princess, because if he tells the truth, she will believe he has feelings for her. That's why he tells her that he came to ask her to refrain from improper acts for a member of the imperial family. He begs Agnes to stop showing him attention and to be an example of a perfect princess. Perfection personified. To his surprise, the girl asks him if he is asking her to stop bothering him and to behave with dignity. According to her, she understands that all this time, unintentionally, she has been bothering him. What a terrible mistake. With the mask of a tired and heartbroken girl, the heroine promises not to get in his way anymore. Raymond, not without astonishment, replies that he is glad to hear that and hopes Agnes will dedicate herself to the service of the empire. Taking the opportunity, the heroine promises to do so and asks Raymond to, therefore, not to visit her again. Upon reaching her destination, the princess gets out of the carriage, still upset that Spencer ruined her date. What a tragedy. Raymond watches her walk away, trying to understand why she agreed so quickly, without even hesitating. Maybe she was too upset, but it doesn't matter. The princess will no longer bother him. Feeling a relief he hadn't experienced in a long time, Raymond orders the coachman to go to the crown prince's palace. Upon arriving with Demian, he discovers that he had already found out about everything that happened. Raymond tells the prince that he believes Gray was trying to take revenge on the princess in that way. Afterwards, he tells Demian about Agnes's promise not to bother him anymore. Although, according to Raymond, the girl did not sound very sincere, and the prince agrees that his sister says a lot of nonsense. Spencer opines that, for this very reason, Agnes could become a serious obstacle for His Highness in the future. Deep down, Demian knows he is right. His sister is a time bomb, and he doesn't know where or when she will explode, being a problem for him. Agnes is an arrogant and pompous barrier, and the crown prince hoped she would marry soon. But the proud nobles of the empire will not be happy that a princess marries a foreigner. That's why Demian was looking for the best man in the empire, worthy of her, and he believed Raymond was perfect. But now Spencer declares that he will not allow anything to tarnish the honor of the imperial family. And the prince believes that Spencer is being very rude, considering that his sister is in love with him. Demian also complains about Agnes, but he is her brother. A stranger criticizing her is something else. That's why he reminds his friend that the princess promised not to bother him anymore. And that's why Raymond shouldn't criticize Agnes in his presence, not even a little bit. Spencer replies that he understood the crown prince, and with that the conversation ends. However, the incidents related to Raymond Spencer did not end there. Meanwhile, in the palace, maids Chloe and Emma run into the princess, and they are horrified to see her. The protagonist is sitting on the sofa, disheveled, wearing dirty clothes and covered in bloodstains. The girls bombard the princess with questions about what happened to her on the mission, and if she encountered a monster. Emma and Chloe are famous for spreading gossip faster than anyone in the palace, and the protagonist decides to take advantage of it. Agnes tells the girls that something terrible almost happened to her, and only thanks to Sir Gray she survived the nightmare. If the maids now spread the rumor that Kylo saved the princess's life, her reputation will improve significantly. But oh surprise, the girls begin to blame the commander for exposing Her Highness to imminent danger. Chloe heard that a couple of people from the Order of the Black Knights were even arrested for their actions. But wait, passing by the Order's building, Chloe ran into Sir Gray and he didn't even greet her. She looked at him with fury. In the maid's opinion, the princess should not trust such a man. He is a walking danger. Since Kylo's reputation is in the gutter, the protagonist hatches a master plan to improve his image. And with tears in her eyes, she confesses that she was wrong about Sir Gray. According to her, contrary to expectations, he is faithful to his convictions and did save her. And when Emma starts talking about the princess's return with Sir Spencer, she asks her not to utter his name in her presence. Hearing this, the maids are eager to know what happened between them. Agnes admits she cannot describe everything in detail, but that they can also hurt her. And she is very tired. The princess understands it is time to act like a tired and heartbroken girl, and reactivates her act. Claiming fatigue and malaise, the protagonist asks the maids to leave her alone, and leave her room. Alone, the girl enjoys that everything is going as planned, as now these little birds will start spreading gossip throughout the palace. However, reality turned out to be different from what Agnes expected. Upon leaving her room, the maids began to discuss what could have happened for the princess, who always talked about Sir Spencer, no longer wanting to do so. Chloe reminds her friend how kind Her Highness is to her people. She assumes Raymond might have lost his temper and insulted the princess. No matter how many times he rejected Agnes, She had never seen her so dejected before. This could indicate that something more than a simple rejection from Sir Spencer happened. And in the end, the rumor that the princess buried her feelings for Raymond, in which the heroine had placed hopes, was distorted. The nobles passed around the news of how Sir Spencer had insulted Her Highness, saying that her place was in the gutter. Raymond could not help but notice how people whispered behind his back and looked at him sideways. And this rumor unexpectedly reached the ears of a man who burst into fury upon learning that Spencer had deeply hurt his daughter. The emperor trembles with rage, hurling all kinds of insults at Raymond, even though his advisor asks for calm, since the source of the rumor is unreliable. But Alexander doesn't even listen, thinking that Spencer's son is no different from his father, an equal insolent one. The Spencer family is one of the 4 ducal families of the empire, so prestigious and wealthy that no one can do anything to them. But the emperor has long hated Duke Spencer, Raymond's father. After all, that man was the first love of the empress, Agnes's mother. The duke even dared to appear at the wedding and tried to stop it. But fortunately, the empress had already rejected his feelings for him, although Alexander still cannot calm down. Without his father knowing, Demian befriended Raymond and even kept Agnes occupied. Until now, everything was going well, and the emperor believed his son would not be like his father. But after all this, he will never accept that his sweet daughter marries that scoundrel. The advisor once again begs His Majesty to calm down, stating that this could be a good sign. According to what the maids said, the princess was heartbroken and even asked that Raymond's name never be spoken again. And this could mean that Her Highness no longer has the same feelings for Lord Spencer. The emperor understands that the advisor is right and asks if there is anyone in high society to whom this news has not reached. According to the man, the news has even reached those who do not usually go out in public. And so it was, because the rumor that the infamous Raymond insulted the princess reached Kahlo's ears. Gray is training in the practice field, completely immersed in his thoughts. Just then, Raymond passes by surrounded by his entourage. Kahlo disliked this man from the start. He was born with high status, education, and vast knowledge. Everything Kahlo had always wanted, but could never have. And even so, Raymond treated him, who had nothing and had tried so hard, like trash blinded by power, as if someone fighting desperately from the bottom deserved neither understanding nor respect. And now, this despicable and vile scoundrel dared to insult the princess, the commander of the Order of the White Knights, obligated to protect the imperial family, treated her not only as a tool, but as someone inferior. Kahlo tries to understand why someone who always acted with nobility suddenly reveals himself. Perhaps he became enraged because something irreparable almost happened, and he vented his anger on the princess. Although, if that is the case, it would mean that Her Highness was crying for him. For Kahlo, he previously thought he would be happy if that arrogant person started sobbing. But knowing that his mistake is the cause, something unpleasantly presses Kahlo's chest. Furthermore, he does not want to provoke the emperor's anger, so he decides to offer a formal apology. However, the problem is that Kahlo has never known how to interact with girls. And apart from when he wears the order's uniform, Gray, as a low-status person, cannot approach the princess. Just as Kahlo is thinking about what to do, a knock is heard at the door. The man is speechless when Agnes appears in person at the door of his office. Kahlo was so confused that he addressed the girl as Her Highness, not as Seer Saint. Regaining composure, he apologizes to the princess for putting her in danger due to his carelessness. Gray promises it won't happen again, which confuses Agnes since she didn't come for apologies. But while we're at it, the protagonist decides to play along and replies that if it happens again, he will be severely punished. The girl's imagination paints a picture of Kahlo being sentenced to life imprisonment in her arms. However, out loud, she only asks the commander what is happening with the district that was not completely patrolled. Upon learning that Sir Craven has already completed it, Agnes eagerly asks when and where her next mission will be, hoping to do it with Kahlo, but he quickly brings her back to Earth, declaring that there will be no missions for a while and that she can participate in training in the meantime. Kahlo remembers that he hadn't had the opportunity to introduce the new member of the Order to the rest of the knights. The next day, the commander takes Her Highness to meet them. Smiling, the princess asks to be called knight when wearing the uniform. The first to introduce himself is Victor Craven, a man who prioritizes strength over theoretical knowledge. Opposite, with a black kitten on her lap, is Ana Monteros, visibly nervous in front of the princess. An awkward and oppressive silence hangs over the room for an instant. The heroine is surprised. Are there only 2 people in the Order of the Black Knights? But Kylo denies it. One robbed a bank during the war. Another tried to murder his enemy. A third wanted to create a magic artifact with a demon corpse, and now they are imprisoned. And since there are 6 in total, the remaining ones are present here right now. The commander orders the Order members to organize their own training and leaves. The heroine is frustrated not to be able to spend a whole day with Kylo, as she expected upon arrival. As the commander leaves, Anna, still very embarrassed, approaches the princess. She shows Agnes her kitten Coco, and almost whispers thanking her for saving him. Anna speaks so quietly that the heroine has to lean in and ask what she said. The timid girl immediately jumps away from the princess and hides behind an armchair. But Agnes knows the reason for her fear. People turned into zombies by demons turn black. Their eyes turn red, and that's why people with black hair and red eyes were often persecuted. Realizing the reason for Anna's shyness, Agnes affectionately tells her that the kitten has a very nice name. The princess is very happy that her companion's pet is fine. The heroine feels lucky to have earned this girl's trust. From the side, Victor's voice is heard, congratulating Agnes for finding the kitten. Turning towards him, the heroine spots a brutal weapon lying on the floor. She asks whose it is, and Victor, easily lifting a huge hammer above his head, replies that it is his. It turns out that right next to it is Anna's weapon. She picks it up easily and offers to show Agnes how it works. Although the protagonist doesn't want to know, Anna tells her that it has 5 overlapping blades. In addition to spraying poison and being able to crush even monster bones, madness is visible in her eyes, while her words have become clearer and firm. Feeling fear for the first time before the Black Knights, Agnes asks where to get such a weapon, and they suggest she go with them to the Imperial Master Armorer. The magical engineering of the Empire developed thanks to the purple magic stone planted in these lands. The first emperor combined his special magic with the mineral, which everyone believed was a simple stone. Thus he created the magic stone, and with it, the first awakened emperor sealed all the demons underground with a beam of light. Thousands of years later, when the demons returned to the surface, the inhabitants of the empire began creating weapons with the magic stones. They believed that one day, a member of the imperial family capable of using the power of the first emperor will be born. The master armorer, upon seeing the princess at the door, trembling with fear, asks why she has come. Feeling a déjà vu, as with the guards of District A15, Agnes asks him to forge her a weapon. According to the master, to create an effective weapon with a magic stone of the right wavelength, one must choose one and take it. Anna explains to the princess that upon taking the correct stone, her palm will heat up. The heroine follows her advice, but for some reason, all the stones remain cold, no matter which one she picks up. Confirming that this is the case, the master reflects briefly. Then he brings Her Highness a small chest and asks her to check its contents. Inside, on red satin fabric, lies a special magic stone, used to create the weapons of His Majesty's personal guard. The heroine does not understand if a magic stone weapon, which should not harm people, is appropriate in this case. The master replies that it used to be like that, but now they create combined weapons for use against people and monsters. No one can replicate this technology. Upon disassembling the weapon, a spell destroys everything. The master looks at the princess with different eyes. Before, he saw her as a cruel child. Now he sees her deep concern for the empire and learns not to judge without knowing. Agnes reaches out towards the stone, but instantly withdraws it with a small scream. The master confirms that the wavelength compatibility is quite good. She should feel the heat without getting burned, and indeed, there is no trace of a burn. The master asks Her Highness what type of weapon she wishes to receive exactly, and since she is in a world of magic and steampunk, she asks for a staff and a firearm. Although she doubted she would succeed, the weapon is perfect, and Anna admires its ease of use. The girl is confident that when the mission arrives, the princess will shine in combat. In reality, the protagonist has not seen Kylo during all this time, since he, unlike Anna and Victor, is always busy. Since no new missions arrive and Agnes is very bored. After training, she decides to take a walk in the area. Strolling, she unintentionally arrives at an area that, apparently, is reserved only for the White Knights. Since Agnes has nothing better to do, she decides to eavesdrop on their conversation, because even if they catch her, They won't do anything to her for being the princess. After observing the group closely, the girl sees many familiar faces, specifically Sirius, Hugo, and Diana. In addition, the Saint Liliana is there, who in the novel fought with Hazel Devon for the protagonist's role. The protagonist overhears Liliana saying that the Emperor has reassigned the princess to support other orders, in addition to the White One, even though the White Order and Sir Spencer try harder than anyone. Visibly nervous, Hugo points out that discussing His Majesty's decision is an offense to the Emperor. When the Saint asks if it's really true, Agnes shakes her head in disapproval, since Liliana was a commoner and finds it hard to understand etiquette. But suddenly, the conversation takes a turn, and the Saint asks about the rumor that Sir Raymond offended the princess. The protagonist notices that only Hugo answers her, while Sirius and Diana show disapproval. Agnes understands Diana's reaction to unverified rumors about the imperial family, but she doesn't understand why Spencer, obsessed with girls, reacts this way to Liliana. Then she remembers that this notorious womanizer makes an exception for commoners. Diana interrupts the Saint's ramblings about whether the princess might suffer from something that hurt her, and suggests ending the conversation, as someone might overhear them. Turning towards her, Liliana asks why Rhinox reacts this way every time she starts talking, and dramatically, shedding a tear, she sadly recalls her origins and how uncomfortable it is for them to be near her. Liliana cries so convincingly that Hugo demands the subcommander apologize to the Saint. Observing the scene, the protagonist experiences a strange feeling of detachment. She tries to remember if the Saint was always like this. Next to Raymond, Liliana looked like an angel, and her ability to attract all the attention unnoticed is astonishing. Suddenly, that trait seems incredibly attractive to Agnes, and she suddenly finds herself on the verge of choosing her second favorite character. The heroine does not understand why the author did not reveal such an interesting detail earlier. If the Saint, who looks like an angel, is actually a cunning girl, she is literally the manifestation of a born actress, who still insists that they scorn her for her humble birth. The first to give in is Sirius, who, indignant at her words, raises his voice at the Saint. However, Hugo defends Liliana again, whose cunning face reveals how much she enjoys this. But the satisfaction quickly disappears from her face when she suddenly hears Hazel's voice nearby. Lady Devon is the protagonist of the novel, the first love of everyone and the personification of innocence itself. To Diana's question about whether the mission was successful, Hazel answers affirmatively, since she was there with the commander. According to her, Sir Spencer is now at home, as they have just returned from the mission, and that's why she came alone. This time, Lillian decides to ask Hazel if she has heard the rumors that Raymond offended the princess. And when she makes a face showing she understands nothing, the Saint thinks about what a bad actress she is. Nevertheless, Lillian, smiling, declares that she believes they are just rumors, as Sir Spencer would not offend anyone. However, Hazel suddenly, smiling just as mockingly, replies that one cannot be sure of that, since the commander hates girls who annoy him, just like the demons he fights. The heroine, who is behind the tree, only needs popcorn to watch this love triangle from the front row. Not knowing what to answer, Lillian, citing the cold weather, prepares to leave and Hugo offers to accompany her. In the novel, this man seemed like a simple man in love with the Saint, but now he seems like an otaku to her, just like her. Since the whole company begins to disperse, Agnes also decides it's time to leave. However, when she turns to leave, she steps on a dry branch and Sirius hears the noise. He draws his sword at lightning speed and demands to know who is hiding in the bushes. One moment more, and the sharp blade is already brushing Agnes's neck. Sirius freezes when he realizes it's the princess, and she coldly asks him to lower his weapon. The knight apologizes and asks Her Highness if she heard everything. The heroine decides to use this problem to her advantage. Turning her back on Sirius, she begs him not to tell anyone that she heard everything. Returning to the role of the heartbroken girl, she says sadly that she doesn't want to cause more trouble. Seeing her, Sirius is convinced that the rumors were true and asks if it's true that Sir Spencer said that her place was in the gutter and that it is better to marry trash than her. Upon hearing this, the heroine is surprised by the turn of events, if she only planned to play the victim. But when she replies that Raymond did not say that, he wants to know what the commander said. So, the protagonist doesn't know what to answer. If she tells the truth, he won't believe her. If she lies, her conscience will eat her up. And if the truth is revealed, her reputation will fall even further. Therefore, she simply decides to say that she doesn't even want to remember that day. The princess asks that in any case, they keep today a secret and leaves. Sirius remains there for a while longer, thinking that the commander probably did say it. And the rumors are true. Meeting Anna and Victor in the hallway, Kylo asks his subordinates if they went to train. Victor replies affirmatively and reports that together they tested the new member's weapon. Upon learning that the princess was with them, the commander decides to ask just in case if she bothered them. To his surprise, Anna replies that nothing like that happened because Her Highness is a good person and is always kind to the kitten Coco. Kylo is amazed at how Agnes can mock people, but at the same time love animals. He is also surprised that, according to Anna, the princess even listens to monster stories, because even he finds it hard to listen to them. Kylo was about to assume that they had misunderstood something, but then he thinks better of it. Compared to him, these two have no power in the palace, and perhaps only they see things objectively. Furthermore, the Princess Kylo has been observing for days, seems to be a totally different person. Victor wants to know why the commander, who rarely leaves his office, suddenly decided to do so now. Believing that soon these two will see the true face of the princess, Kylo replies that he has news for them. He asks them to inform Lady Saint when they see her, as he plans to assign her a new task. To that place, according to Kylo, all the knights of the capital of the Black Order will go, including himself. Sirius Melville often visited the palace as a child, as he was His Highness's page. Princess Agnes, whom he met then, was always unusual and wanted Raymond to play only with her. She was conceited, spoiled, and got angry when something didn't go her way. But over time, Sirius understood that she did all that to beg for attention and love. As just a child, Agnes lost her mother and her nanny. Her father was always busy. Her only older brother was cold towards her, and due to her status, she couldn't make friends. When all her loved ones distanced themselves, the princess was left completely alone. Those who are constantly by her side cannot hate Agnes, as they know her loneliness. Even the commander knows it, but he cannot be more lenient, and Sirius cannot believe he expresses himself like that. Suddenly, the knight remembers that, on the first day of the princess's mission, he advised Raymond to go after her. And if he hadn't done that, they wouldn't have met, and Agnes wouldn't have had to listen to all those insults. Concluding that everything happened because of his fault, Sirius wonders what the hell he should do now. Meanwhile, in the palace dining room, the protagonist has lunch with the Emperor. The Emperor hasn't seen his daughter in a while and thinks she lost a lot of weight, but he doubts if it was worth it. They inform him that Agnes, unfailingly, diligently attends the training sessions of the Order of the Black Knights. Maybe sending his daughter there was the right decision, because she suddenly became more serious. When lunch is over, the heroine asks His Majesty to allow her to go to her chambers, since tomorrow she needs to get up early to prepare for the mission. Inside, the girl is ecstatic. Finally, she can go on the mission she had been waiting for so much. The 4-day trip with her beloved, excited Agnes so much that she hasn't slept for days. But she doesn't feel tired. The young woman even brought a mini camera, which she hid under her cloak. Suddenly, the heroine notices that the White Knights are preparing carriages. She tries to understand if they are also going on a trip today. What I don't understand is why so much luggage, if the White Knights have the closest area, and the Black ones the farthest. In the war, everything fell on those who were on the front lines, and now they are forced to go way out into the sticks. It is obvious that the leader of the four orders must be the commander of the White Knights, Raymond Spencer. Thinking about it, I even feel sorry that the rumor about my offense hasn't spread further. When Raymond spots the princess, for some reason he stares at her silently, although the girl doesn't care at all, and starts searching for Kylo with her eyes. Finally, she spots Gray and approaches his order. He lines up his assembled squad to explain everything once more. They are heading to Area SB3, which was the most damaged during the war. After psychological aid and treatment for the evacuees, the village must be thoroughly inspected for subsequent reconstruction. Given the vastness of the territory, the order will be escorted by soldiers. If everyone is ready, they should set off immediately. Agnes prepares for the mission with overflowing enthusiasm. This reaction surprises Kylo. After all, they are not going on a picnic. He explains that it will be a difficult task, where monsters, like the one that attacked the princess, will appear in groups. Faced with this, Agnes plans to stay close to the commander to avoid danger. Kylo misinterprets her words again, believing the princess is implying that he must not allow what happened to happen again. In his eyes, it seems Agnes is threatening him with imperial wrath if anything happens to her. For an instant he thought he might be prejudiced, but she is not just any girl, but a princess. The protagonist reminds the commander of his own words about the need to hurry. Kylo sighs, because this whole situation is like taking care of a baby. As night falls, the group was crossing a forest, and the commander ordered them to camp there. He himself goes to inspect the surroundings, and will return while the others prepare to sleep. The heroine watches in amazement as everyone starts working, acting on their own. Without orders, Agnes also cannot stand idly by, but this is her first expedition, and she doesn't know what to do. Finally, the girl finds something suitable for her and decides to dedicate herself to preparing the food. After exploring and returning to the camp, Kylo freezes in astonishment, not understanding anything. The entire group, with the princess in the lead, is sitting around the bonfire devouring grilled crabs. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be dried meat and soup, and Kylo doesn't understand where these crabs came from. He is also surprised by the morale of the soldiers, who just a while ago were grumbling about having to go on an expedition with the princess. And now they have become friends with Agnes and thank her for the abundant dinner. Kylo is stunned. Does the princess really think they are on a picnic and caught crabs because the soldiers complained about the food? However, the squad, which thought one only ate that well in expensive restaurants, is truly happy. Agnes herself is also quite cheerful. Although Kylo understands that this is better than lowering morale, sitting by the fire feels so good. After another day, the Order of the Black Knights arrives at a shelter near District SB3. The locals are upset by the news of their arrival and do not understand why the princess is coming, if no one in her village is demonized. They heard that Her Highness mocked the saint, and they fear she will treat them like slaves. And finally, the Black Knight squad, led by Sir Grey and Princess Agnes, enters the village. The elder comes out to greet them, and the commander wants to hear his report on the condition of the sick. The local children, meanwhile, cannot take their eyes off the beautiful princess. Some, naively, take her for a saint, thinking that Her Highness would not arrive on horseback. The heroine dismounts and asks the boys where they keep the sick here. A boy, completely spellbound, points to a house very close by. Demons spread two diseases. One is demonization, which blackens the skin, causes loss of reason, and attacks like a monster. Only a saint can cure a demonized person. The second disease does not change the person like demonization, but it is incurable, and it causes necrosis throughout the body. Not even the purification of a saint can cure that person. Only some light mages can rid one of this disease. And Agnes is the youngest light mage, which means she now has the opportunity to restore Kylo's reputation. The commander's conversation with the elder is interrupted by Anna, who approaches him. The girl informs him about a big problem that has suddenly arisen. The supply of drinking water to the village has been completely cut off, and for 2 days now, only water mixed with monster blood comes out of the tap. The problem is not only with the main river, but also with any other source of drinking water. Kylo is perplexed. Since there is a river, he thought it was unnecessary to include clean water in the material aid. Suddenly, he remembers that Princess Agnes is a mage capable of purifying water. However, she has never used this power for the good of others. And Kylo doubts whether she will agree to cooperate. Seeing Victor dragging sacks nearby, the commander asks where Lady Agnes Saint has gone. The news that the princess has gone to the sick leaves Kylo in shock. He immediately goes out to look for Agnes, who, obviously, cannot be left unsupervised even for a minute. Because if she harms the sick and causes a scandal, he will have to answer for it. Suddenly, he hears crying coming from a room, and tries to imagine what the princess could have done in just 1 minute. But upon opening the door, Kylo sees Agnes standing in a room full of beds and sick people. The entire room glows with her magical energy, healing the lepers, many crying with joy. The commander stands petrified, overwhelmed by this miraculous vision. Upon hearing someone enter, Agnes turns and gives Kylo a wide smile. To the words of thanks to the princess, she replies that she was fulfilling her duty as a knight and following Sir Grey's order. Now all the healed thank not only Her Majesty, but also the commander, calling both of them heroes. The heroine asks why Kylo was looking for her, and he tells her about the problem with the river. The commander confesses that he wanted Agnes to clean it, since the locals have no access to drinking water. However, he does not rule out that she has now exhausted all her strength on such a powerful spell. The heroine decides not to miss the opportunity to touch Kylo, and, leaning on his strong arm, she complains of dizziness. Although Gray thinks the princess needs to rest, she insists on cleaning and suggests they go to the river together. Kylo realizes that if she clings to him like that the whole way, it will take an eternity to arrive. So, without thinking twice, he picks her up to reach the destination faster. The young woman's heart stops at such closeness, something she never dared to imagine. Upon reaching the river, they horrifically discover how terribly polluted it is. According to the elder, the situation has worsened drastically since the morning. The princess clung to Kylo the whole way, and he thought she was really very tired. But even so, she is willing to clean the water, showing her great sense of responsibility. The protagonist, meanwhile, enjoys his arms and dreams of sleeping like that every night. Kylo addresses her and asks if she will be able to purify the water. Looking at the river, Agnes replies that that amount will be difficult to clean all at once. She first decides to deal only with the water she needs now, and after resting, eliminate the source of contamination upstream. The princess asks to fill the barrels with water, and the soldiers get to work. When all the barrels are full, Agnes approaches and, using her magical power, purifies the water. Kylo orders it to be taken to the village and distributed among the inhabitants. In reality, the heroine was not sure of her powers and still managed to clean all the water at once. Noticing that the princess turns pale, the commander asks how she feels and if she is dizzy again. Determined to take advantage of the opportunity to legally hug Kylo, Agnes replies that she is a little tired, and that obviously she will have to return like this. However, unexpectedly, she truly feels dizzy and loses consciousness. Taking the princess in his arms, Kylo orders an urgent search for a place where he can lay her down. Unconscious, memories of her past life at school flood the heroine's mind. Her classmates whisper behind her back that she is always alone because her mother cheated on her husband and had her, then abandoned her. The girl's father doesn't hold back either, and drunk, he smashed the windows of all the shops in the area. His gloomy demeanor makes everyone uncomfortable, and she just stares at her phone, even if she has no one to talk to. In reality, the heroine spent her time reading a novel, falling in love with a lonely character for the same reason as her. This way, she felt less alone, and that's why she was willing to do anything for Kylo, who had become the light of her life. Finally, the heroine opens her eyes and realizes that she had fainted. She was so happy to hug Kylo that she didn't even notice how exhausted she was. Suddenly, she hears the commander's voice asking the princess how she feels. The heroine is surprised that Kylo has been personally taking care of her while she was unconscious. After ensuring she is fine, Gray tells Agnes to rest and prepare to immediately go inspect the forbidden area. For some reason, at this moment, he seems much colder to her than yesterday. Despite everything, she enjoyed seeing Kyle's face right upon waking up. Upon leaving Agnes's room, the commander stops in the courtyard, lost in thought. He remembers how restlessly the girl slept, as if she were having a nightmare. Kyle decided to wake the princess up and extended his hand toward her. But just then, she pronounced his name, and that made the man freeze. Kyle felt incredibly ashamed, not understanding why, in her delirium, she said that. The next day, all the villagers and soldiers comment worriedly on whether the princess will be okay. Neither group understands why there are these rumors about Her Highness, when she is very kind to everyone. As soon as Agnes leaves her tent, everyone immediately surrounds her to find out how she is. The heroine is amazed at how much others' opinions can change in a single day. This encourages the girl, and smiling, she reassures everyone, assuring them she is fine. Kylo also appears and states that Agnes really looks better. Smiling, the princess replies that it is thanks to the commander. Kylo's heart stops for a moment, but then, regaining composure, he gives the order to leave. The task for the Black Knights today is to scout the village and return the houses to the locals, while the soldiers will protect the shelter and the people. For the reconnaissance, the commander proposes splitting into two teams. Team number 1 will consist of Lady Monteros and Sir Craven, and Lady Saint will go on reconnaissance in a team with Sir Grey. To make matters worse, according to the commander, Agnes's horse does not look like a warhorse, and since it could be dangerous, the princess will go on the mission with him. Upon hearing this, the girl jumps off her horse without hesitation, ready to join Kylo. For a while, the heroine enjoys the ride, hugging her idol tightly around the waist. But soon they have to dismount, as they must scout the forest, where monsters could hide instinctively. The heroine worries about the horse, which could be attacked in their absence, but Kylo affirms that the animal is trained to flee if there is danger, and offers his hand to Agnes to help her down. Realizing how attentive he is, the heroine smiles unintentionally. Noticing that strange smile, Kylo wonders why he has to babysit on this mission too. What the princess said about sleep left Gray very confused, but then he understood that she simply hated him, and that his mere existence was a nightmare for that girl. From depressing thoughts, a strange sound suddenly distracts Kylo. When he turns around, Agnes, trembling and paralyzed by fear, asks if there is anything similar to Mina's around here. It seems to the princess that she has just stepped on something strange. Kylo doesn't manage to shout at her, not to dare move her foot when Agnes lifts it. The very next instant, as Gray catches the girl, everything around them is enveloped in a brilliant violet smoke. They both fall embraced into a room, surrounded by stone on all sides. Kylo explains that it is a trap to contain demons, and whoever steps on it gets trapped here for a while. Realizing the trouble she has caused, Agnes asks fearfully how long they will have to stay, and if monsters can appear. The commander reassures her, explaining that no monsters will appear and they will get out of here in half an hour at most. The protagonist decides to take advantage of this opportunity to be alone with Kylo and, claiming dizziness, she asks him to let her lean on him. According to her, due to the incessant use of magic yesterday, she has not yet fully recovered. Feeling guilty about this towards the princess, Kylo allows her to lean on him, and she gladly rests her head on his chest. Gray is completely disconcerted by everything that is happening. Kylo does not like Agnes Saint, who humiliates people because of their origin. She behaves arrogantly, securing the Emperor's support. Of all the men, Agnes is in love precisely with Raymond Spencer, and Kylo doesn't like any of the previous points. However, now he smells her body odor, which reminds him of forest flowers, and the touch of her soft and delicate skin. Kylo orders himself to concentrate and remember all the people he hates. Lifting her head, Agnes apologizes to the commander for the fact that her strength has been completely depleted. And at that moment, looking at her beautiful face, all his previous thoughts shatter. Resting her head on Kylo's chest again, the heroine enjoys the contact with his firm muscles. After a while, the trap finally opens, and they reappear in a sunlit forest clearing. Agnes regrets that time passed too quickly for her. She extends her hand to the commander and promises to be more careful, not to step on any more mines. Kylo cannot believe that the princess is offering him her hand. Getting up, he replies that the mines are quite difficult to detect. The princess interprets this sentence as an offer to carry her in his arms again, and she happily accepts. But Kylo misinterprets her wish again, believing that Agnes simply considers him her servant, or even a carriage. Thinking that touching him might be unpleasant for her, he suggests she climb onto his back. The heroine delightedly hugs her idol around the neck, inhaling his scent. It seems to Kylo that the princess doesn't see him as a person, let alone a man, and although it's not new, now it infuriates him. Finally, they reach the source, where apparently the contamination begins. Smelling putrefaction everywhere, the heroine prepares to clean starting from this point. But the magnitude is incomparable to yesterday's, and she doubts she can manage it alone. Agnes decides to use the power of the magic stone and draws her weapon. The heroine aims and shoots at the water, which instantly lights up with a brilliant purple light. And blinding, Kylo finds it astonishing how quickly the river is cleaning up. In fact, Agnes can't believe her eyes seeing clear water instead of murky blood. Just then, Anna and Victor join them, covered in monster blood from head to toe. Their appearance horrifies the protagonist, but these two, as if nothing happened, boast about a glorious and fun hunt, where monsters emerged one after another. Interrupting their enthusiastic story, the commander asks if they found the source of the contamination. According to Anna, they managed to discover a place, simply a sea of blood. The surviving monsters gather the corpses of their kin, build an altar, and perform a resurrection ritual. Kyle congratulates the knights on the excellent job done. He then suggests finishing, clearing the village of mines, and returning. When all the mines were finally collected, the commander gave the order to return. However, the Black Knights did not know that Agnes stole some to lock herself up with Kyle again. All the villagers came out to say goodbye to the knights and soldiers, to thank them for the rescue, and to bless them. Tired but satisfied with the trip, the squad members finally return to the Imperial Palace. One of the soldiers notices that the White Knights have also returned to the capital. However, he cannot understand why they travel to their missions in carriages. Upon getting out of the carriage, accompanied by the commander of the White Knights, Raymond, the saint greets Sir Grey, and although Kylo looks at her with his usual expression, Liliana screams, pretending to be scared. Instantly, Hugo Rodian appears by her side, as always ready to come to her aid. Liliana claims she is fine, and that she was simply disconcerted by Kylo's serious expression, since she always meets kind knights. Observing this scene, the protagonist cannot understand the point of all this farce. Obviously, the saint is simply annoyed, because Kylo did not bow before her. However, Agnes feels no hatred towards this girl, and even finds her obvious pretense adorable. Liliana, with a feigned smile, acts as if she just noticed the princess and asks her if she returned from her mission. And no matter how the protagonist feels about the saint, she will not allow her to address Kylo like that. Therefore, drastically changing her expression, Agnes bluntly and sharply asks when she gave Liliana permission to open her mouth. The saint's confusion is evident, but the stupid smile does not leave her face. Meanwhile, the princess continues to scold her and declares that, according to the laws of the Empire, a person of lower status cannot address a person of higher status first. Agnes doesn't understand how it's possible that Liliana couldn't remember even that simple rule. But the saint doesn't give up, and apologizing, she recalls the emperor's order that, as long as the princess wears the knight's uniform, she must be treated as a rank-and-file member of the order. However, Agnes replies that His Majesty gave that order to only one person, Kyle Grey, and the distortion of an imperial order is equivalent to the profanation of the honor of the imperial family. The princess looks at Raymond, who is standing next to the saint, and pronounces the final part of her speech. According to her, seeing a knight of the order ignorant of imperial laws reveals the irresponsibility of his superior. Having said that, and looking at Raymond with contempt, Agnes turns her horse and rides away from them. The soldiers behind Spencer comment that it was too much, although the saint made a mistake. Even the commander of the White Knights got what was coming to him, despite having nothing to do with it. Raymond interprets the princess's behavior as an attempt to damage his honor for rejecting her. Upon returning, Agnes informs His Majesty about the completion of the mission and her safe arrival. In sound, after this, the emperor's overprotectiveness prohibits the young woman from leaving the palace for a while. During the princess's absence, her maids were able to take a vacation in their homeland. Therefore, the heroine learns about the reaction to the actions of the Black Knights and what happened at the gate days later. While bathing, Agnes asks her maids about Daisy's whereabouts. The girls reply that she will arrive next week, but they look at each other strangely. A couple of days ago, Chloe and Emma were at a tea party where they heard about a meeting between the White Knights. In Black Ones, the girl told them how the princess publicly pointed out a mistake by the saint and blamed Sir Spencer for it. Chloe and Emma looked at each other, having obtained the juiciest gossip of the year. And now, pretending she just remembered, Emma asks the princess if she really reprimanded Sir Spencer for some mistake by the saint. Chloe asks if everything is all right with the lady, as she ran into Sir Raymond for the first time after that incident. The protagonist slips back into the role of the rejected girl and replies that she cannot be fine, because every time she looks him in the eye, she feels as if a dagger pierces her heart. Having obtained the desired reaction, Agnes asks that Sid Spencer not be mentioned anymore. Emma agrees to change the subject and mentions that she heard about the princess's feat. People are talking about how Her Highness cleaned all the mountains and rivers in the area with a single wave of her hand, and healed hundreds of sick people. The most just and courageous knights of the Black Order saved the village from the monsters. Agnes is surprised that people talk about her like that, and tries to understand what all this means. In reality, although people are prejudiced about the Order of the Black Knights, they greatly helped the villagers, and, as a sign of apology and gratitude, they began spreading very exaggerated stories about their feats. And soon this rumor caused a great stir among the aristocrats who have sons in their families. The princess not only perfectly completed the mission, but also broke up with Sir Spencer, a great chance to intermarry with the imperial family. But the most shocked by the news was Duke Spencer, who once opposed the emperor's marriage, and the empress. He bursts into his son's room, demanding that he explain what he told the princess for such a rumor to spread. The duke is sure that Raymond will regret it. He should be grateful that the noblest girl in the empire is in love with him. In his opinion, It would be great if they became friends again, like siblings, as they were in childhood. Raymond interrupts his father and repeats once again that he will not marry the princess. The Duke does not like this myopia of his stubborn son, but Raymond has his reasons for remaining so firm in his stance. In his youth, his father lost his first love, deceived by false hopes of closeness. He married Raymond's mother only because she strongly resembled her, and his wife dedicated her life to winning his heart. And Agnes is the only child of the woman whom his father still misses so much. A girl who always does whatever she wants. Since Agnes loved Raymond and always followed him, he saw her as a little sister. Cute and charming, and everything was fine until that day when Raymond, standing by the window, watched the storm. The butler, who knocked on the door, informed him that the princess was asking him to remember their agreement. It was a simple childhood promise, made as a joke, to go to the pond in the rain to see the frog fairy appear. But Raymond did not want to go, as he was expecting news of his mother's trip home, and in this, whether the monsters were getting stronger. However, according to the butler, the princess promised to severely punish her friend if he did not show up. Moreover, the butler would also be punished if he did not bring Raymond to the princess. Upon returning to the mansion late that night, terrible news was already waiting for the young man. Raymond knew that Agnes was not guilty of his mother's death, but if he had stayed home, he would have at least been by her side in her last hour. The idea that the princess was the daughter of the woman who poisoned his mother's life gnawed at Raymond's mind. It was unbearable for him to see Agnes, whose selfishness had caused his mother to spend her last moments of life alone. Despite constantly avoiding her and not reacting to her, the princess did not leave him in peace. One day, Raymond deliberately summoned her in the rain and forced her to wait in the downpour all day. He wanted Agnes to catch a cold and release him from her harassment for a while. But the princess healed quickly. She wrote a letter to Raymond and invited him to the castle. And now, although all this bothers him, he is sure that Agnes will not give up this affection, and she won't let him go this time either. Meanwhile, Daisy Rodian returns from her vacation and happily runs towards the princess. She missed her so much. The protagonist, for her part, is sitting at her desk creating something. It turns out the girl made a camera, because compared to her past life, she is missing many things in this world. On the previous mission, Agnes couldn't take a single photo, as she was busy cleaning. And now, she is eager for this device to capture Kyle's incredible beauty. However, the heroine fails to do it again, because Kyle has gone somewhere again. Meanwhile, Gray is in front of his family property, and painful memories resurface in his mind. One after another, she calls him trash and yells that she shouldn't have given birth to him, that her life would have been different without him. His half-siblings mock him and demand gratitude for letting him live there, being the son of a maid. The Viscount convinces Julia, his wife, that the maid is lying, that this boy is not his son. They don't look alike. Leaving those memories behind, Kylo enters the house, where all his hated ones are already seated at the table. Viscount Austen Gray, at the head of the table, greets him joyfully, suddenly calling him son. After pointing out that it has been a long time since they last saw each other, he invites Kylo to sit at the table. Everything that happens seems repulsive to the man, but he forces himself to smile and sits down, asking his father about his health. 27 years ago, Kylo's mother, the most beautiful in the village, dreamed of being the lover of an aristocrat and moved to the capital. She managed to attract the attention of a nobleman and became pregnant. But it was not luck, but misfortune. Because the child had black hair, different from the Viscount's, he insisted that he was not his son. Due to Austen's betrayal and his wife's contempt, she became increasingly nervous. The easiest target to vent her anger on, and who had become a burden, was Kylo. By the time he got used to the violence from his own mother, the Viscountess and his half-siblings caught her preparing an assassination attempt against Julia Gray. They dragged her to the backyard and beat her so brutally that at one point she stopped breathing. That day, Kylo abandoned the Gray family, determined to do anything to survive. Once, he was stabbed while trying to pick a pocket, and another time, they almost beat the boy to death for stealing bread. Even when Kylo managed to find a job, they often fired him without giving him any money. One day, during his wanderings, a mercenary took pity on him and took him along. Accepting the hand offered to him for the first time, Kylo also decided to follow in his footsteps. He clung to any job that would give him money, surviving tenaciously, like an insect. This is how Kylo became known, and upon joining the Order of the Black Knights, Viscount Gray contacted him. It was a clear pretense to forge ties with the imperial family. However, Kylo was so fed up with this miserable life that he decided to kneel as many times as necessary. Because if noble blood runs in him, even if he is illegitimate, the Viscount will surely help him succeed. And when power is in Kylo's hands, he will take revenge on everyone for what they did to his life. The Viscount heard the rumor of the princess's transfer to Kylo's orders, and he hopes he will bow to her for the sake of the family. Unexpectedly, he announces that he will soon send his sons to the order to greet Her Highness. This news confuses the eldest son, Benjamin, as much as Kylo. But the second son, Bradley, does not hide his excitement about the imminent meeting with Agnes. While his father gives instructions on their appearance, Kylo interrupts him, questioning the need to see the princess. According to Austin, he doesn't need to understand anything, just obey orders. He reminds Kylo of his favor by allowing him to take the family name, while Kylo repeats to himself that it is still not the time. Molly asks her mother if she can also meet the princess, but Julia orders her to keep quiet. The girl insists and begs to be taken at least to tea. Hearing this, the Viscount notes that, despite the social season having begun, his wife has not been invited. Julia becomes visibly nervous, although she tries to hide it. Austin asks his wife to try hard if she doesn't want her children to miss the opportunity to marry royalty. Hearing those words, Kylo visualizes the image of Agnes smiling warmly at him. The plea for her to repeat what she just said slips from his lips, almost unintentionally. But reacting in time, Kylo states that he was unaware of Her Highness's return to society. Despite this, Austin is sure that the princess has already made an appearance twice. Since Agnes's reputation has notably improved lately, she has indeed decided to attend social events. And today, she plans to go to a charity party organized by Marchioness Melville. The protagonist chooses receptions, especially charity ones, as it is an opportunity to show herself as a role model, which the aristocrats like so much. Moreover, the young woman has her sights set on the ladies who will attend the event. That's why Agnes prepared such a charming outfit, as if she were a young girl debuting in society. However, first she must think about what to donate, and the only thing that comes to mind is jewelry. But since that option wouldn't help much to shed her image as a lavish princess, Agnes comes up with another idea. The girl decides to lighten her brother's wallet and runs to his palace. Kylo has no appetite after what he heard and silently pokes the meat on his plate. Noticing this, the Viscount asks his wife to order the chef to prepare something his son likes next time. Julia promises to do it without complaining, though not without some displeasure. Meanwhile, Kylo himself tries to understand and comprehend why he reacted that way. Being honest with himself, he always had to endure humiliations. And when someone, for the first time in his life, took his side, he was happy. So much so that at that moment, he could have believed that Agnes was simply an angel. However, Kylo is sure that someone like him cannot compare to them. For example, the perfect Raymond Spencer in everything could undoubtedly be part of this noble and beautiful picture. Someone like Kylo simply cannot measure up to them. Therefore, perhaps he simply pities the princess, who has become the target of people like that. Kylo increasingly feels that he is only angry at those who chat without understanding anything. That's all. Waiting for her brother, Agnes examines his library. All the books are new and were placed there, obviously just to look smarter. Appearing at the door, Demian immediately makes an observation to his sister about what she is doing in the room without its owner. However, Agnes is not going to stay silent and replies that he also used to come into her chambers without permission. The prince reasonably points out that he cannot help but be angry when she rummages through the office where he handles state affairs. The protagonist decides to change the subject and asks her brother for advice, as she is going to a charity party, but she has nothing to donate. To her brother's question about whether she has any jewelry left, Agnes replies that, in her opinion, donating jewelry is boring. Demian is surprised that the one who cried with joy every time she was given jewelry since childhood suddenly considers them boring. The strangest thing is that Agnes asks him for advice, like an older brother, about what might interest art connoisseurs. Demian asks her to wait and approaches the bookshelf. He offers his sister a collection of poems written by the poet Grandel 100 years ago. According to the Crown Prince, lovers of culture cannot help but dream of such a copy. He points out that, with age, Agnes finally made the right decision, as Marchioness Melville is a lady of high repute. while the protagonist tries to understand why he is giving her something so valuable. Demian suddenly says that Raymond will also be happy. He suggests his sister have tea together, as he will soon be receiving a good guest. But before she can refuse, Sir Spencer's visit is announced. With the excuse that she urgently needs to prepare for the party, Agnes runs out of the office. But she doesn't manage to get far, as she runs into Raymond at the door. After a quick exchange of glances, the protagonist lowers her head and quickly passes by him. Upon leaving, Demian notices that Agnes really seems very offended by Spencer. The Crown Prince asks him, as a friend, if he really hates his sister that much. Normally, Raymond would answer affirmatively, without a second thought. But today, for some reason, the princess seems completely different to him. Her gaze seemed full of pain and reminded Raymond of something. It was exactly the same look his mother always gave his father. Raymond swore he wouldn't live like his father, but he has a feeling he will break that promise. Marquis Melville had 2 sons. One of them, Sirius Melville, heir and member of the Order of the White Knights, was a rake according to rumors. The second, born out of wedlock, a member of the Black Knights, is currently on a mission, since the Marquis registered his illegitimate son as the adopted son of his younger brother. The relationship between the spouses deteriorated. After Marchioness Melville sent her husband to his lands, she took control of the family in the capital with a firm hand. Upon arriving at her charity event, the princess thanks the Marchioness for the invitation. According to Lady Melville, it is an honor that Her Highness has come to such an unattractive place. The ladies gathered at the tables were surprised that the princess not only came without a maid, but even greeted formally. From all this, they concluded that Agnes had truly matured. What a change! The heroine knows that, for everyone to forget the princess's previous behavior, she must try her best. Seated at the table, she praises the Marchioness's garden, which, according to her, is even more charming than rumored. The Marchioness is worried if Agnes will get bored in a place where there are only older women. Mrs. Norris admires the ribbons in the princess's hair. With that hairstyle, she reminds her of her daughter during her debut. According to the lady next to her, calling the princess a girl is inappropriate, and Norris apologizes for her mistake. Agnes acted like an adult princess, but with so many mature ladies, she decides to change her strategy. The heroine mentions that she used to hear mothers put yellow ribbons on their daughters for their debut, and she wants that too. Moreover, according to Agnes, chatting with them gives her peace and joy, as if she were talking to her own mother. The strategy of acting like an adorable daughter works and melts the hearts of the ladies present. The heroine listens with delight as they talk about how happy the Empress would be to see her children grow up. Everything is going according to plan. In the garden appear the late guests, Mrs. Ross and Viscountess Grey, with her younger daughter, who admires the princess. Julia asks Molly to calm down and behave. Upon learning who these women are, the heroine realizes she is facing Kylie's stepmother. Mrs. Ross thanks the Marchioness for the invitation and apologizes for being late due to an incident with the carriage. Mrs. Melville accepts the apology and asks to be introduced to the woman next to the guest. Ross introduces her best friend, Viscountess Grey, and her daughter Molly. Approaching the princess, Julia greets her, saying it is an honor to meet Her Highness. The protagonist looks up and meets the eyes of the woman whose family, she knows, cruelly mistreated Kylo. Julia, meanwhile, says that her sons will soon present themselves before the princess, a member of the order that Kylo commands. Agnes smiles slyly, amazed at how that woman dares to utter her name with her repulsive mouth. The Viscountess speaks enthusiastically about her sons, Benjamin and Bradley, but the princess suddenly interrupts her and asks what she can say about Kylo. According to Agnes, she used to have a mistaken idea of Sir Grey and regrets having made many mistakes out of ignorance. Despite this, Sir Grey treated her without prejudice. He is always responsible in his post as commander, and she has learned a lot from him. Agnes smiles, explaining that this is why she is interested in what his family might say about him. Julia hears the ladies whispering behind her back, trying to understand why the princess is so interested in Kylo. To prevent this, and apologizing in advance, she informs that Kylo was born from her husband's infidelity. According to the Viscountess, since childhood he mocked her children and even resorted to theft. Turning to the Marchioness, Julia declares that Mrs. Melville should understand her. After all, she was also forced to accept a child born out of wedlock into the family. Unable to bear it any longer, the Marchioness jumps up and orders the Viscountess to leave her soiree immediately. Despite Julia's attempts to apologize, Melville orders the butler to throw her out. Later, the Marchioness sits in her room, distressed because the party ended in the worst possible way. Not only did that woman show up uninvited, but she also revealed her secret. The Marchioness worries about how her old enemies will laugh when they hear about this. When the butler enters the room, Mrs. Melville gets angry, as she asks to be left alone. The servant apologizes and hands the Marchioness a tray with a letter from the princess, adorned with a yellow rose and a ribbon from her hairstyle. The yellow rose means eternal love, and it is customary to give the mother who raised you hair ornaments with that flower. Agnes writes that she was very impressed by the Marchioness's garden today, and it is impossible not to notice the great work she has done. Therefore, the princess decided to send Mrs. Melville a gift for her work, and as a sign of gratitude for the invitation. Tears fall from the woman's eyes directly onto the letter, as not only did her husband cheat on her, but she was devastated to learn that this child would be her nephew. However, the Marchioness could not give up the mansion she had created, nor her reputation, and her beloved son. Even though the woman felt terribly bad, there was no one to comfort her. And for the Marchioness, the princess's letter was the first comfort. On the way home, the protagonist reflects on how ridiculous the situation is. What nerve that woman had to claim that Kylo mistreated her children. Of course, there are certainly people capable of believing such nonsense. That's why, after throwing Julia out, the princess threatened to severely punish anyone who spoke. In short, the protagonist earned the support of an influential Marchioness, so she no longer fears for her image. Chloe and Emma impatiently await the princess in the courtyard, eager to know how the party went. They help Agnes out of the carriage and bombard her with non-stop questions. The protagonist perfectly knows that these gossips have another hidden intention. Her suspicion is confirmed when Emma tells her that the Crown Prince chose Lady Diana Reynolds as his partner. They are referring to the gala ball at the Empire's Foundation Festival. The maids are dying to know who the princess plans to attend the event with. The next day, the heroine visits the commander, who asks the reason for her visit. In reality, the girl longs to throw herself into his arms and tell him how much she missed him. But instead, she asks when her next mission will be, as everyone is participating except her. According to Kylo, Agnes won't have missions for a while due to the Empire's Foundation Festival. She prefers to be with him rather than at the festival, but as a princess, her hands are tied. In the novel, Kylo never appeared in the chapters set in the ballroom. Agnes was going to go with Demian, but he had already decided to go with his childhood friend. Perhaps Kylo is her chance. The princess asks the commander if he also plans to attend the ball. He smiles mischievously and asks why she asks, leaving the heroine confused. And suddenly, the revelation hits Agnes like lightning. She is the problem. She forbade commoners and bastards from attending the ball. Sarcastically, Kylo suggests, if you need a dirty bastard to laugh at, come as my servant. Agnes, trembling with shame, denies the accusation and asks if she can join missions after the festival. After receiving a yes, she begs that, if possible, Kylo accompany her on all her missions. The request completely disconcerts him, and he stares at the princess in silence for a moment. Composing himself, Kylo demands that she leave if she has nothing else to say. The heroine leaves dejected. She thought they were getting closer, but she ruined his mood by talking about the ball. Alone, Kylo remembers his father's words about his children meeting the princess. He gets up from the sofa and, furious, punches the window frame with his fist, letting out a heavy sigh. Meanwhile, Agnes racks her brain thinking about how she will find a partner for the ball. In the novel, the princess dragged Raymond Daly and begged him to dance with her, only to then flee in tears. After this, Hazel and the Saint unleashed a war over Spencer, who ended up completely alone. But now Agnes doesn't want to go to the ball with Raymond, although going alone would put her reputation in check. The young woman doesn't know what to do now, as most decent men must already have partners. Imagine the heroine's surprise when, the next day, Sirius appears and asks her to be his partner. Agnes doesn't understand why Melville asks this of her, if he never crossed the line or flirted with her before. According to Sirius, the princess supported his mother when she had trouble at a charity party, and made sure the rumors didn't spread. Therefore, if she allows it, he would like to return this favor to Her Highness. The heroine is amused thinking about how the Marchioness pressured Sirius to ask her to be his partner. And although she avoided rumors not because of the Marchioness, but because of Kyle, everything turned out wonderfully for her, and Agnes immediately accepts. Sirius is amazed at how quickly the princess agreed, but with the yes, he decides to talk about the outfit. Agnes says she will wear a lilac dress, matching the color of her eyes. Suddenly, Sirius finds himself thinking about how beautiful the princess's eyes are. Before coming to the palace at his mother's insistence, he was in no mood. Agnes had never attracted him with her overdone image. But for some reason, today she looks nothing like her usual self. Time flew by. Finally, it is the day of the festival. A festive atmosphere hangs in the air. The Grey siblings are ready and eager for the upcoming event. Before they could only watch the princess from afar, but this time everything will be different. Benjamin is euphoric. Thanks to Kylo, one of them might marry the most beautiful girl in the Empire. While the brothers get ready for the ball, their mother sits in silence, thoughtful, looking out the window. If the rumor spreads that she was kicked out of that party, Julia won't even be able to approach high society. And even her husband might ask for a divorce. She believes the princess avoided those rumors for her sake, but there is still reason to worry. She asks her sons if Kylo plans to introduce them to the princess, if he even promised to arrange a meeting for them. But he hasn't communicated, and that worries Julia. Benjamin thinks Kylo is busy with the order, but Bradley doesn't understand why they can't meet the princess without him. In the ballroom, the arrival of Her Highness Agnes, accompanied by Sir Sirius Melville, is announced. Seeing the princess with another, the Grey siblings freeze, wondering where on earth Kylo is. While Agnes dances with Melville, everyone whispers about this strange couple. Sirius, for his part, feels like the absolute protagonist of the evening. The Crown Prince convinces himself that his sister has finally gotten over Raymond. He scans the crowd for his friend to see who he came to the ball with, and sees that Spencer chose Hazel Devon as his partner. Raymond watches the princess dancing with Sirius with a strange feeling of annoyance. Melville catches that look, wondering why Spencer is upset if he himself didn't want to be Agnes's partner. Every man in the Empire, including Sirius, has felt inferior compared to Raymond at some point. But even if he is attractive, he is not a good person, as a man must know how to make a girl happy. Such a charming person pursues him, and he is so rude that he hasn't even looked at her once. If Sirius were in his place, he would never be cold to the princess. In his imagination, Melville already visualizes how happy they could be by marrying and forming a wonderful family. And while his partner is daydreaming, the protagonist only thinks about how much she would like to meet Kylo right now. After the ball, the princess sits down for a drink. Although she is warned that the drink is strong, Agnes is bored and finds nothing better to do. The only interesting thing here is the impending fight between Hazel and the Saint. As soon as she thinks this, she notices that both girls are heading somewhere and not missing the show. She follows them. Sirius stepped away for a moment to greet friends, so he is surprised not to find the princess. An acquaintance informs him that Her Highness wished to take a solitary walk. Sirius blames himself for his lack of insight in leaving Agnes alone, whom he obviously hurts to see Sir Spencer. Meanwhile, Liliana goes out after Hazel, who suggested they talk privately. Neither girl notices that Agnes is watching them from behind the wall. Devon declares that her patience has a limit, and the Saint could get into trouble if she continues like this. But Liliana claims that it is Hazel who is crossing the line, as she was Sir Spencer's original partner. According to her, Miss Devon has always been like this, envious of her beauty and male attention. The protagonist watches the scene with such fervor that she doesn't notice Sirius approaching from behind. Just as he is about to ask what Agnes is doing there, the princess covers his mouth and whispers for him to be quiet. It is the first time that a younger and smaller girl has subdued Sirius. However, for some reason, he doesn't feel like resisting. Suddenly, Sirius believes that after so many years of adventures, he has finally found the right one. He was about to say something to the princess, but suddenly she leaves him perplexed and looks behind the wall. To the protagonist's surprise, Hazel and Liliana leave for somewhere. Turning to an embarrassed Sirius, Agnes orders him not to follow her and to return to the ballroom. When he leaves, the heroine goes into the garden, trying to find the girls. Suddenly, Hazel blocks her path. She saw someone eavesdropping, and it was the princess. With a mocking smile, Agnes declares that she couldn't miss such a fascinating spectacle. When asked if she liked it, the princess replies that, unfortunately, she couldn't hear everything. The protagonist always considered Lady Devon capricious, but she is surprised by her unexpected coldness. It turns out that Hazel is alone, as Liliana burst into tears and fled, probably to her eternal admirer. Taking the opportunity, Devon asks the princess if it is true that she renounced Sir Spencer's love. Agnes confirms it, saying she got tired of the pain Raymond causes her. Therefore, she threatens to decapitate anyone who dares to ask a single more question on the subject. According to Hazel, the princess made the right decision, since Sir Spencer hates her with all his being. The heroine understands that the girl probably just vented her anger at her after talking to the saint, so she decides to simply ignore it and return to the ball. On the way to the palace, Agnes begins to feel terribly dizzy. Due to the princess's long absence, they have already started looking for her. However, she doesn't want to go back there, where there is bright light and everyone looks at and applauds her. Because Kyle, the only person she would like to see right now, is not there. The heroine was reborn in this world, and until now has lived according to the dictate of the novel. All of this was just for Kyle, and she doesn't need a banquet that he cannot enjoy. Agnes feels so lonely without him, and knows that he only wants someone to acknowledge him. So she mentally promises to stay by Kyle's side and heads towards him. Demian sees for the first time that Sirius Melville spends time at an event completely alone. He mentions it to Diana, astonished at how a womanizer who is always with girls can be alone. The prince wonders if Sirius has reformed, or if it's all because of Agnes. Raymond approaches Demian and Diana, asking what is worrying his highness. Taking the opportunity, the heir asks Spencer what he thinks of Sir Melville as a husband for Agnes. Demian thinks that, apart from his fame, Sirius could be a good husband. Something must have happened between him and Agnes for them to arrive together today. Moreover, being interested in the opposite pole after a romantic disappointment is very common. If they marry, Sirius's fame will cease to be a problem. No one would dare look at the princess's husband. Although the prince thinks it would be good to consider, Raymond seems saddened. Lost in thought, he steps out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. Lately, Agnes seems to ignore Raymond, and he doesn't know if his childhood feelings are awakening, or if it's all the fault of the dreams he has so often. He dreams of Agnes following him everywhere in his childhood, and of his mother, who cries. And she resents his father. The images of these two people, who have no relation, overlap. Meanwhile, Kyle is practicing fencing in the training ground. Sometimes, Gray wondered if he could ever attend such a ball. Perhaps the princess was right to forbid commoners and bastards from attending such events, because even if he, who knows nothing but fighting, went to a ball, he would surely be embarrassed there. Not long before, Kyle was passing by the palace, from which laughter and sounds of music came. In the window, he saw Agnes sitting alone, and for some reason she seemed bored to him. This seemed strange, as the princess had always loved these events so much that she even forbade people like Kyle from attending. At that moment, he remembered how Agnes defended him when she used to humiliate everyone, except Raymond. He remembered how she reached out her hand to him when she used to hate him so much that her eyes ached just looking at him. Kylo cannot understand why this girl keeps confusing him this way. She is a noble princess, and he is just a house dog raised on the palace grounds. When the emperor revokes his decree, not even Agnes's intoxicating scent will ever reach him. From all these agonizing thoughts, Kylo is distracted by the sudden sound of footsteps. And when he turns to see who arrived so late at the training ground, he sees the princess in front of him. Kylo doesn't manage to ask why Agnes came here, when he notices how pale her face is. She looks like she's about to faint, and Gray, dropping his sword on the ground, runs towards her and holds her. The heroine realizes that it is all the fault of that strong liquor, which she was warned about at the ball. Agnes raises her hand, and Kylo is already ready to receive her slap. It's not the first time she's going to hit him for daring to touch her with his dirty hands, and he closes his eyes to receive the blow. However, instead of a blow, Kylo feels the warm touch of her palm on his cheek. Pulling the man of her dreams towards her, the princess kisses him tenderly on the lips. After the kiss, Agnes looks into Kylo's eyes for an instant. Then she nestles into his chest and falls asleep. It suddenly occurs to Gray that the princess simply mistook him for Raymond. The next morning, the heroine opens her eyes with a terrible headache. She tries to remember how she got home yesterday. The girl remembers that yesterday, slightly drunk, she was looking for Kylo, but after seeing him at the training ground, the memories are interrupted. The princess calls the chamberlain and asks him to prepare a mourning outfit. Moreover, Agnes needs to know how on earth she got home yesterday. The woman reveals that her highness was brought back by Sir Gray, who found her near the knightly order. According to the chamberlain, Kylo carried Agnes in his arms, and it was a very gallant scene. The protagonist blames herself for forgetting her beloved's embrace, unaware of what really happened. After the festival, the relationship between Agnes and Kylo experienced a subtle change. For some reason, he started avoiding the princess, and she hasn't managed to see him since then. Kylo hated her from the beginning, but at least they saw each other, and now Agnes searches for his mistake at the ball. Suffering from ignorance, the heroine hears the familiar buzz of a returning drone. In the novel, these drones were usually used to patrol the area. However, the protagonist modified this copy for a different purpose. Agnes transformed it into a fan device to track the territory she needed. The heroine told the head of security that the drone was for monitoring training, and it would only film in public places. Agnes looks with admiration at the commander's muscular body, whose beauty must be passed down to posterity as a treasure. The girl remembers that a much more important day than the Empire's Foundation Festival will arrive very soon, and she cannot miss it for a very important reason. Benjamin Gray heads to the gambling house, and at that moment his friends call him. They apologize for the delay, although they don't consider it critical, as the gambling house is also open at night. The friends explain the delay by saying they saw something strange on the way. Thanks to the size of the city and the moving population, successful businessmen and cultural figures place their advertisements on the electronic screen in the center of the capital. Such advertising represents guaranteed success and wealth. The friends suggest Benjamin look at the city's main screen, and when he turns, he freezes in astonishment. He doesn't understand why his half-brother Kylo Gray's birthday greeting is on the screen. It turns out the greeting was also displayed in the window of the capital's most famous cafe. Benjamin can't believe they are congratulating Kylo on his birthday at the place of his dreams. His mood worsens so much that he cancels his visit to the casino. The protagonist always dreamed of being rich to show everyone Kylo's true worth. And now, being a princess, she has achieved it. So satisfied, she takes a picture in front of the greeting. In the novel, Kylo's birthday was revealed by pure chance. One day, returning from a mission, his gaze was inevitably drawn to a calendar, and the date seemed familiar to him. Kylo then realized that yesterday, while destroying monsters, was his birthday. That people learned about the commander's beauty, who previously didn't appear at any event. It was worth the money spent. The protagonist knows how vital it is for Kylo to feel loved and hopes he likes the surprise. He is surely in the main square, perplexed and blushing while looking at the screen with his portrait. But upon arriving at the order, the heroine discovers that the commander was absent all day yesterday due to an urgent monster extermination mission. Assuming that only Kylo missed the posters and that everything was in vain, Agnes becomes very disheartened. Nevertheless, the other members of the order look at her with such surprise that the girl tells herself to calm down. Meanwhile, in Viscount Gray's house, this event sparked a real scandal for Kylo. Julia accuses her husband of the rumors that he, to destroy his wife's morale, put up posters congratulating his illegitimate son. In his defense, Austin claims that it is just gossip and that his family would never stoop to such a thing. The Viscountess suggests that Marchioness Melville, who holds a grudge against him since that event, might have done it. The Viscount's sons enter the room, and Benjamin declares that this theater is most likely Kylo's doing. He promised to introduce them to the princess with his brother, but he hasn't shown up or given any sign at the festival. According to Benjamin, Kylo will not keep his promise. He surely wants to embarrass our family. No matter how much he thinks about it, the Viscount concludes that only Kylo could have done this. But Austin spent all the money his illegitimate son earned as a mercenary. He cannot afford such a luxury. Benjamin believes his father was very generous with Kylo. He surely borrowed money in the family's name. Hearing that, the Viscount becomes furious with that scoundrel. Due to his commander position, he did not respect even the family reputation. Meanwhile, at the palace, the crown prince urgently orders his sister to come to his office, and she runs towards him. The strange thing is that, for some reason, the princess is being escorted by the Knight of the White Order, Joshua Cromwell. Joshua is Raymond's biggest fan. He respects him so much that he almost venerates him. But the knight hates Agnes with all his soul, and perhaps even now he is scolding her in his mind. The heroine tries to figure out what that boy is plotting, because she doesn't believe they put him there to protect her. Suddenly, at the end of the hallway, the girl sees Raymond entering the prince's office. Clutching Joshua's shoulder, the princess hides behind him to avoid Spencer's gaze. Thinking that her brother is trying to force her to meet Raymond, Agnes declares that she will go see Demian later, to the surprise of the accompanying knight. She sadly says that she does not wish to meet Sir Spencer. According to her, if he is near, strange rumors about him could resurface. After asking Joshua to tell her brother that, the girl turns around and runs away. The knight looks at her surprised, as he thought Agnes wanted to attract the commander's attention, reviving strange rumors. But apparently, the princess is not seeking his attention, but rather fears him, and perhaps the rumors that she gave up are true. Upon entering His Highness's office, Joshua reports that the princess had urgent matters and promised to come later. After dismissing the knight, the prince asks Raymond if he completed his task. Spencer leaves a huge pile of papers on the table, with the list of girls Sirius Melville corresponds with. Demian, of course, knew that guy was a rake, but he didn't imagine so much. The prince takes the pile, hoping not to find Diana's name on it. Raymond asks if Demian, even after this, intends to facilitate the marriage between the princess and Sirius. He is sure that Melville is not a suitable candidate for Agnes, even after the wedding. He will cause trouble. Demian is amused by Raymond's reaction to what is happening. Sarcastically, he points out that it is not common to find men as reliable as him, who could be Agnes's partner. But Raymond himself said he didn't like his younger sister. The prince intends to try that trick one more time, and so he asks Spencer if he still thinks the same. He doesn't want to force Raymond, but he believes it's better to keep watching Sirius. Spencer was already leaving, but the prince stops him to tell him something else. Since he leaves for the mission in 2 days, Demian suggests visiting Agnes tomorrow. Apparently, His Majesty plans to send him shortly to distant lands from the capital. Apparently, the father is worried about the rush concerning Agnes's engagement. He doesn't want her to marry so soon. That's why Demian advises Raymond to at least say goodbye before she leaves. He promises to do so if it is possible for him. When Spencer leaves his office, Demian bursts into wild laughter. In his opinion, deep down, Raymond likes Agnes. She is pretty, talented, important, and smart. Evidently, his sister decided to change tactics. Before, she didn't pay attention to him. And it seems it worked. The Viscount and his sons arrive at the palace to meet with Kylo, but they are informed that Sir Grey left on a mission 2 days ago and has not yet returned. Since they are here, Benjamin and Bradley suggest Austen meet with the princess. The Viscount gets furious with his foolish sons, as not just anyone can enter the palace. Austen is now completely sure that Kylo sold his family's name, since his mission was supposed to start tomorrow, and now he is definitely avoiding them under the pretext of a non-existent mission. Meanwhile, Kylo really is on a mission, which he volunteered for just to leave the palace. He himself doesn't understand what he is doing, and why he has been trying to avoid the princess all this time. Although it is quite expected that after that night, he doesn't have the courage to meet her. The mere thought of Agnes mixes feelings of shame and discomfort in Kylo, making his heart beat faster. The princess sees him as a replacement for Raymond, and he gets angry with himself for feeling this. Moreover, Kylo doesn't know how to act if Agnes remembers something about that incident. What will happen if she suddenly asks him about what happened that night? And what if the princess suspects he has dirty intentions towards her? Before these feelings grow to the point of being uncontrollable, before desiring what he can never have, he must remove Agnes from his life. Kylo orders himself to wake up because the princess loves Raymond Spencer. The Chamberlain surprises the princess, trying to leave the palace secretly once again. He begs Agnes that, at least this time, she take a night with her. The protagonist takes the hands of the woman she considers her nanny and whom she trusts, and asks her to trust her. Agnes promises, like last time, to return soon, assuring that, furthermore, she carries weapons with her. Although the heroine hung the congratulatory posters in the cafe in advance, Kylo couldn't see them, as he left for his mission early, so she will have to go and take a bunch of photos again. However, upon arriving at the cafe, Agnes discovers it is closed and starts to get distressed, since she is in a big hurry. There are too many people around, as at this hour everyone is heading to work. If the girl takes a photo now, they will notice her and understand that she is a fan. Therefore, Agnes decides to walk around the commercial street and then go home. Absorbed in her thoughts, she doesn't notice someone watching her from the corner. Raymond watches the princess walk away, wondering why she is doing this. It doesn't mean he likes Agnes. He just feels guilty for having hurt her. Raymond thought she would feel better if he at least apologized, so he decided to visit her. But he never imagined that the princess would risk so much, sneaking out of the palace alone. dressed so strangely. If something happened to her, his subordinates would be responsible. Did she really do this, just to sneak around the commercial street? Agnes was always like this, constantly wandering around the palace, and ended up getting into trouble, involving her servants. Once, Raymond found her at the edge of the forest, on the opposite side of the palace. He was furious to see her sleeping under a tree, with a completely serene expression on her face. Raymond believed that since then the princess had matured a little, but apparently he was wrong. At that moment, Agnes sees a huge teddy bear at a stall and, like a child, runs towards it. Observing this scene, Raymond thinks that this adult woman, not long ago, was a little girl. And if everything were as before, if they could return to those times when they were close, as brother and sister, he wished that they could at least end their relationship on good terms. Raymond is about to reach Agnes to confess everything, but a carriage suddenly appears. The coachman loses control of the horse, which seems crazed and heads straight for the girl with the bear. Raymond freezes, stunned, while they shout that the carriage has run over the young woman. He runs towards her. It can't be true. He hasn't told her everything yet. It cannot end like this, senselessly. As Spencer reaches out a trembling hand towards Agnes, the crowd begins to recognize him. Raymond can't believe this is happening to him again, exactly like the other time. Lifting Agnes from the ground, flooded with tears, he desperately screams her name. The protagonist opens her eyes and clutches her head, which is exploding with intense pain. The instant the horse lunged at her, she remembered when a car ran her over. Is everything repeating itself? The heroine died on the way from the cafe, where she celebrated Kylo's birthday. Suddenly, she realizes she is in a familiar place, and hears a voice she knows very well. Looking up, the girl sees the goddess who helped her be reborn last time again. The protagonist cannot believe she made another mistake and killed her again. The goddess smiles and shrugs, stating that even she doesn't understand it. It has never happened in hundreds of millions of years. The girl demands that she be sent back quickly, before her body spoils. Suddenly, she realizes she can demand compensation. The previous rebirth was payment for her past death. Therefore, the heroine asks the goddess to save Kylo's life. But she replies that she cannot do that. According to her, it is impossible to change the future that has not yet arrived, because he has not yet died. So, the heroine asks for a magical instrument that can revive, or the ability to resurrect people. But it turns out that a human is not allowed to possess it. The girl tries to understand what else could help her save Kylo's life, something capable of destroying the crack in the snowy mountain that will cause his death. The goddess simply suggests returning the heroine to the novel, because time is running out. However, the girl already knows what she needs and asks her not to change the subject, and just give it to her. She is sure that she doesn't even need to say it, because the goddess has already read her thoughts. In the second half of the first part, Raymond coincidentally finds a pendant that contains some kind of magic. With firm conviction in her voice, the heroine asks the goddess to give her the relic of an ancient god. The girl demands that she take responsibility for her life. Declaring that there will be no third time, the goddess waves her hand to send the heroine back. When the girl disappears, a man appears behind the goddess, who has just finished regulating the law of causality in the second world. He needs to know why the goddess did that, as this time death was not an accident. She replies that this girl has strong potential for influence, and the gear of her world has already begun to fall apart. Therefore, if she continues on the same path, many people will die, and the world itself could be in danger. So this girl is the one who must put everything in order, and it will be better for everyone if she focuses on those she loves, and on the people of this world. Kneeling by his daughter's bed, the emperor sobs, begging her to open her eyes at last. Nearby, unable to hold back tears, Demian watches the scene, unable to move from the pain consuming him. The three maids closest to the princess, in tears, pray for her to wake up. Suddenly, the heroine, whom the goddess decided to return to life once more, opens her eyes. Those in the room rush towards the princess and lean over her, unable to believe the happiness of her awakening. The doctor informs the emperor that, surprisingly, even the wounds on His Highness's face have healed quickly, and now she only needs rest. Sitting up in bed, the heroine sees a relic on her wrist and realizes it wasn't a dream. Demian doesn't understand how his sister can be well, if for a moment she stopped breathing. But the doctor cannot describe it as anything other than a miracle. Suddenly, the prince strokes his sister's head and tells her she should have been more careful. Although his attitude seems strange to her, the heroine decides to allow him this gesture of affection one time. Suddenly, Demian gets the idea to bring Raymond to see Agnes. The emperor immediately supports the idea, believing that this way his daughter will heal and recover soon. The heroine is fed up and doesn't know when they will believe that she no longer feels anything for Raymond. Suddenly, the young woman realizes that she died from a blow to the head in a square full of people. She understands that she won't have another chance and decides to pretend she doesn't remember who Raymond is. Agnes shocks everyone by asking why they are bringing that man before her. Demian runs to his sister, shakes her by the shoulders, and tries to remind her that she wanted to marry Raymond. The doctor starts asking the princess who she is and where she is, and she answers everything, except who the commander of the Order of the White Knights is. Instead of mentioning Sir Spencer, the heroine names Diana Reynolds, which shocks everyone again. The doctor explains that the girl is unconsciously suppressing memories of that person due to a related traumatic experience. According to the emperor, if his daughter suffered so much because of that man, so be it. But Agnes's oddities don't end there, and instead of Sir Spencer, she asks for a man named Kylo Grey to be brought. Smiling, the princess declares that she wants to see him right now. The emperor is unsure if he understood his daughter correctly, so he asks again who she is talking about. But Agnes confidently replies that she wants to see her boss, Sir Kylo Grey, the commander of the Black Knights. According to her, he is very brave, and has saved her several times on missions, so she will be calmer by his side. The princess talks about this with such sweetness that neither the emperor, nor the prince, nor the maids can understand what all this means. Leaning over his sister, Demian says that Sir Spencer actually saved her, and that if he hadn't found her, she would have perished. The heroine is surprised by this, as a workaholic like Raymond couldn't have been on the commercial street at that time. Suddenly, she remembers that he came to the palace that morning to meet her, but she asked them to say she wasn't there. Obviously, then he started following Agnes, although it is not entirely clear why. Demian keeps insisting that is why his sister should meet with Raymond, and then, perhaps, her memory would be restored. But the emperor sharply interrupts him. He remembers the doctor's words about Agnes forgetting Spencer due to a traumatic experience. The emperor asks the doctor if, in that case, this reunion will negatively affect the princess, hoping he confirms his words, while Demian expects the opposite. Alexander doesn't understand why he should return memories to Agnes that only caused her suffering. Father and son argue furiously, while the heroine longs for them to bring Kylo already. Tired of waiting, Agnes decides to interrupt them and pretends her health is drastically worsening. Seeing his daughter so ill, the emperor orders Kylo Grey to be brought immediately. The heroine is glad she tricked everyone with her partial amnesia. Now she can get close to Kylo. Meanwhile, behind the door of the princess's bedroom, Raymond stands. Seeing Agnes bleeding, he remembered the horrible nightmare he lived through on the battlefield. The soldier who was smiling yesterday, his comrade who boasted about his family's letter. Both turned into cold corpses in an instant. Although he felt himself breaking apart little by little, Raymond couldn't show it. If the commander hesitated, the morale of the knights would plummet. So he always pushed himself to the limit. He filled his head with the next move, and his sadness subsided over time. It was like when Agnes constantly bothered him, like when Raymond's pain from losing his mother faded. Now suddenly, he felt that perhaps she knew about his fall. That's why he was always close, bothering him so he wouldn't sink into sadness. Perhaps in that peculiar way, Agnes was supporting him. Raymond sometimes thought that nothing would change, even with her disappearance. But whether he likes it or not, there isn't a single day in his memories where she isn't present. Agnes had already become the most important part of his life, and he, not her, was the one who couldn't live without that relationship. And yet, Raymond always coldly rejected that small hand that always tried to cling to his. And when he saw her, lying lifeless on the ground, he begged her to open her eyes and not leave him. Like his mother, promising never to let go of her hand again and even marry her if she wished. He made that promise, but behind the closed door, he heard that Agnes couldn't remember who he was. Not only did she not want to see him, but she demanded that Kylo Grey be brought to her. Insistent knocking echoes on the door. Kylo opens, and it's Her Highness's maid. Emma begs Mr. Grey to present himself at the palace immediately. The young woman reveals that this morning, the princess suffered a serious accident and barely regained consciousness. Without even letting her finish, Kylo demands that she tell him the rest on the way. He rushes out, buttoning his doublet. As she guides him towards the princess, Emma recounts that Her Highness left the palace and was run over by a carriage. She stopped breathing, but then, suddenly, miraculously came back to life. Now she is fine, but as soon as she woke up, the first thing she did was ask for Mr. Gray to be called. Kylo cannot believe what he is hearing. The princess must have hit her head very hard when she fell. While trying to find another explanation, Emma suddenly stops to greet Mr. Spencer. Lifting his head, Kylo sees that Raymond is in the doorway with a very strange expression. Upon seeing Gray, for some reason, that expression becomes even more ridiculous. They ask Kylo to go to the princess's bedroom, and Raymond remains in the hallway, lost in sad thoughts. Upon entering the room, Kylo discovers that even the Emperor and the Crown Prince are there. He kneels before them, but His Majesty tells him to drop the ceremonies and stand up. The doctor asks Gray to sit down, and he obediently sits next to Agnes's bed, not understanding what is happening. Suddenly, the princess places her hand on the back of his hand and thanks Kylo for saving her. Squeezing his hand between hers, she tells him what she had to live through in that instant, when her whole life flashed before her eyes before dying. The Emperor doesn't understand. Is it necessary to hold hands to tell that? However, without paying attention to his father's words, the princess continues her speech. According to her, the clearest memories were of how he, Sir Gray, had saved her countless times. That's why, as soon as she opened her eyes, the first thing she felt was the need to thank him. Observing the scene, Demian starts to think that his sister has more than just memory problems. Upon hearing this, the protagonist decides to kick her brother out of the room. Out. So Agnes complains about his loud voice, which has given her a terrible headache. Following the complaint, the doctor and the Emperor ask the prince to leave his sister's room. The doctor advises His Highness absolute rest, as doctors will come to examine her thoroughly periodically. Given this, Agnes asks that Sir Gray also visit her daily and keep her company. She cannot live without him. Turning to Kylo, the princess asks if he objects to this request. What will he say? Completely bewildered, the man promises to do whatever she orders. At her feet, Agnes thanks him and advises him to rest, as Sir Gray must be exhausted after the mission. Kylo leaves the princess's quarters, understanding absolutely nothing of what is happening. Did Agnes really die and then, by some miracle, come back to life? He also doesn't understand why Raymond had that look on his face and couldn't come in to see the princess. And finally, why did Agnes specifically ask him to keep her company? Kylo tries hard to forget that feeling, but will he be able to erase what happened that night from his memory if he visits the princess daily? As soon as he remembers it, he feels his face flush instantly again. He tries to convince himself it was just an accident, caused by alcohol and nothing more. Alone in the room, the protagonist collapses on the bed, flooded with happiness. Now she can see Kylo every day. For a while, everyone will treat her carefully. And if someone says nonsense like Damien, she will kick him out with the excuse of a headache. And on top of that, the heroine now has a divine relic. Raymond suffered horrors to get it, and she obtained it effortlessly. But Raymond will remain the protagonist, even without that relic, which Agnes needs much more. The next day, the Chamberlain enters Gray's office to convey a request from the princess. Kyle spent the night wondering if yesterday was a dream, but obviously it was real. Just as he finishes his work, he gets up from the table to follow the servant. After that night, Kyle will be alone with Agnes for the first time and doubts he can look her in the eyes. On the way, he asks the Chamberlain to tell him more about the princess's memory problems. Kyle justifies his interest so as not to make mistakes when speaking with Her Highness. Then the Chamberlain reveals that, after yesterday, she completely forgot Sir Spencer, whom she admired before. He doesn't know the details, but doctors say it happens after too painful an experience. Kylo saw something like this in the war, when on a battlefield where the devil massacred a battalion. A soldier miraculously survived. His memory of the war was completely erased, and that's why he mentally reverted to when he was 15 years old. And he is still undergoing treatment. This could mean that, for the princess, Raymond's rejection was an equally strong blow. Apparently, that time bomb of the imperial palace was a person capable of being hurt and fall into sadness. According to the Chamberlain, it's not just the memory. Everyone is worried that even the princess's character has changed, and since yesterday, no one dares even to breathe. To the question of whether she has become crueler, the man replies that it's the opposite. Agnes is constantly smiling, and that terrifies everyone. Upon arriving at the princess's room, Kilo sees Raymond standing in front of the door again. Turning towards them, he asks with aversion in his voice what Gray is doing there. Kilo coldly replies that the princess called him, and then asks Raymond a similar question. From the Chamberlain's reaction, he understands that Spencer came uninvited. Raymond cannot help but comment sarcastically that Gray, apparently, is now the princess's babysitter. Seeing him, Kilo doesn't understand how this shameless wretch dares to show himself before the girl who lost her memory because of him. With his arms crossed, he replies sarcastically that Agnes must be calmer with him than with someone she doesn't even remember. And since he must see the princess and doesn't want to smell bad, Kilo advises Raymond to get out of the way. This infuriates Spencer, and the Chamberlain, to avoid a scandal, announces Her Highness's arrival of Sir Gray. When they invite Kilo in, he walks past Raymond with a victorious smile. Spencer remains standing behind the door, trembling with rage from head to toe. The protagonist receives Gray with a smile and invites him to sit at the table, where tea has already been prepared for them. Kilo always knew the princess was beautiful, but today, for some reason, he sees her in a completely new light. According to Agnes, she doesn't actually like tea very much, but drinking it with him feels special. Sensing his own confusion, Kilo looks away, trying to convince himself that it is all because of that damn kiss, while Agnes enthusiastically tells him that the doctor recommended a light walk. Gray realizes that, for some reason, he cannot maintain even such a simple conversation. The protagonist suggests a walk after tea, and he repeats again that he will do whatever she orders. Suddenly, the princess falls silent, and Kilo, looking up, notices that she is staring at him fixedly. He barely manages to grasp what is happening in her head when Agnes suddenly says that he has very beautiful eyes. These words penetrate directly into Kilo's heart, as phrases of another nature resurface in his memories. He remembers how the Viscountess screamed that he shouldn't dare look at her with his despicable eyes. Inherited from his mother. Not believing that someone could like his eyes, Kilo decides that, due to the accident, the princess also has vision problems. When the protagonist suggests they go for a walk, he immediately accepts, hoping the fresh air will put his thoughts in order. But his thoughts get even more tangled when Agnes suddenly takes his arm. Kilo feels the pleasant aroma emanating from the princess. During his confinement with Agnes in the trap, she smelled so sweet that everything became blurred for him. Maybe Kilo is trapped now too, but he doesn't know if he can escape this time. Looking into the princess's eyes, he wonders when he will be able to recover, but he cannot concentrate. Meanwhile, the heroine doesn't care about the sun rays, nor the gentle wind, nor the fragrant flowers, because she is finally walking with her beloved, and for the first time since her birth she feels happy. If it weren't for the servants watching them, everything would be absolutely perfect. Noticing a drone above their heads, Kilo asks if that object really guarantees the palace's security. After receiving an affirmative answer, he confesses that for some reason it seems to him that it is only watching them. And although it was actually the heroine who orchestrated the date to immortalize it, she justifies the drone by saying the emperor ordered it for her safety. Enjoying the picnic, Agnes thanks Kilo for this walk, as she felt lonely locked in her room. In the middle of a relaxed chat, she eats a piece of cake, leaving a smear of cream on the corner of her lips. When Kilo points it out to her, Agnes pretends to be embarrassed, although she actually did it on purpose. Then, the protagonist cleans another part of her mouth on purpose, hoping Gray will offer his help and touch her lips. When Kilo takes her handkerchief, their hands brush, and the princess's face gets dangerously close to his. The man cannot take his eyes off her and seems to be losing his sanity. He orders himself to wake up, because that girl simply cannot be that beautiful. Kilo reminds himself how many times, before she had insulted and humiliated him, she did it with those same lips that he is now delicately touching with the handkerchief. Gray is embarrassed, not understanding why she pushes them towards him with such desire. He wonders how she would react if someone else were sitting in his place. Meanwhile, the princess talks about how considerate Sir Gray is, and that disturbs him even more. Kilo remembers Raymond, who is especially worried now, and imagines him in his place. But immediately he thinks that, after all, it's good that Agnes forgot that scoundrel, because it's an opportunity for the princess to start her life from scratch. If this had happened when she was with Spencer, perhaps he would have dared to steal a kiss from her. Just thinking about it, Kilo feels disgusted. Suddenly, Agnes yawns and asks Sir Gray to allow her to sleep a little, as sweets make her sleepy. Kilo goes to make room for her on the blanket, but she refuses and lies down directly on his lap. The man doesn't understand why the servants and chamberlains around him are not rushing to prevent this. He also doesn't understand why such a test has fallen to him, when he did everything possible to avoid something like this. In this empire, Gray tried harder than anyone not to attract attention, and Agnes should not have chosen him. That's why he wanted to run away before his feelings strengthened, and he believed he could restrain himself. Suffering, contempt, loneliness, fatigue, torture, and endless battles were the easiest things to endure. However, enduring a tender and affectionate tone, a sweet smile like cotton candy, and a warm gaze turned out to be more difficult. Looking at Agnes, Kylo is filled with a tickling sensation he experiences for the first time in his life. The man is completely lost and doesn't know how to suppress it. He reaches out his hand, strokes the princess's hair, still unwilling to admit to himself that he has fallen in love. Meanwhile, observing everything that happens, Emma and Chloe try to understand why the princess behaves this way with this cruel man. It even surprises them that today she dressed up more than usual. Later, in her room, the protagonist remembers Kylo's blush when she touched him. She finds it even more adorable when he tries to hide his embarrassment. Chloe and Emma enter the bedroom and ask if she enjoyed the walk and what she talked about with Sir Grey. Understanding what the maids think, the protagonist replies that everything was fun. As always, since she has established her reputation, Agnes now decides to take care of Kylo's. She says she spent a lot of time with him in the Order of the Black Knights. According to the princess, Kylo saved her several times and even protected her from a monster that lunged at her, risking himself. And when she lost consciousness on a mission, he took care of her, staying up all night, and carried her exhaustedly so she wouldn't step on a mine. The protagonist watches with pleasure how the maid's opinion of Sir Grey changes. She hopes that, unlike in the book, Kylo will live a long life and overcome his feeling of inferiority and rejection. The princess tops off her story by saying that precisely because of that, she wants Grey to receive fair treatment. Raymond, drinking wine, thinks that Agnes refused to see him and even invited Kylo to her side. The doctor reports that all the princess's wounds have healed, and there are no signs of psychological trauma. According to him, apart from memory loss, Her Highness presents no problems. Raymond has no doubt that the memory of him only caused Agnes pain. He ignored her on purpose and hurt her with words, wishing for her to suffer, and regretting it now is useless. With the realization that his own existence has lost all meaning for Agnes, Raymond falls off his chair, dropping the glass from his hands, which shatters, staining the carpet with its contents. He writhes in pain. Just as the crown prince enters his friend's room, he horrifiedly discovers Raymond lying on the floor. There is still life in Spencer's eyes, and Damien screams, ordering a doctor to be called urgently. Raymond closes his eyes and sinks into long-forgotten visions. Agnes was in front of him screaming that he had promised to be her partner. He replied, dryly and coldly, that he never said that and he was already partnered with another lady. Raymond advised the princess to find another partner, but she wanted no one but him. She wanted to know the name of his partner, but Spencer knew that Agnes would torment him if he said it. Raymond didn't understand how long she would remain stubborn, like a child, and declared that if she continued like this, in the end, she would have no one left. In Agnes's eyes, there was unimaginable pain when she repeated, once again, that she needed no one but him. Not wanting to continue the conversation, Raymond turned around and left. But the princess caught up with him and clung to his arm, repeating that she wouldn't let go. It seemed to Raymond that, with her arrogant attitude, she was trying to show that she could get whatever she wanted. Agnes was obsessed with the idea of achieving it by any means possible. Raymond disliked this to the extreme, and after pushing the princess away, he declared that was why he didn't want to be her partner. Agnes's eyes filled with tears that ran like a stream down her face, flooded with pain, but Raymond, not caring, stated that he preferred to live with a repulsive demon than obey her orders. And although he left, the princess shouted after him that she would wait for him if he changed his mind. Agnes did not reject Spencer, no matter what she said, so he thought she was fine with it. She was always selfish and childish, and he believed that her unwavering gaze would always be fixed on him. That's why Raymond didn't care when she suddenly rejected him. He thought she was pretending to get his attention, but the girl really distanced herself from him. Anguish suddenly flooded Spencer as he realized that she could disappear from his life. He depended much more than he thought on the love she gave him. Raymond promised himself never to hurt Agnes again. She called him, held him back, and constantly chased him. But when his life was filled only with her, she forgot about him. Raymond didn't understand how Agnes could do that, and why precisely now. Upon waking on his sofa, Spencer discovers Demian sitting next to him. According to the prince, Raymond's subordinate got so scared for his master that he came to him and informed him that he wasn't eating anything. Demian wants to know what is wrong with his friend and why he reacts this way to the incident with Agnes, since he believed Spencer wouldn't care, even if she died. In reality, Raymond also believed that, but when he saw her small hand fall lifelessly, everything inside him collapsed. Staring intently at Spencer, Demian repeats his question and asks if he has changed his opinion about Agnes. Raymond, who doesn't understand if all this is real, admits that he himself doesn't understand. He cannot believe that Agnes has forgotten him. If only he existed in her life, it's impossible. Observing his friend closely, Damian notices that he is completely lost. Perhaps Agnes would even be happy if she saw him in this state. He began to understand her feelings, but she already remembers him, and for both of them it is a catastrophe. That's why Damian, as Crown Prince, old friend, and older brother, decides to intercede and declares that he will help. If Raymond wants to marry Agnes, the prince is willing to help. Before, Spencer thought that someday he would marry the princess, as a loyal knight of the empire, following the orders of the imperial family, even though he desired that more than death. And for some reason, now that he is finally free, Raymond feels that he has been stripped of the future he deserved. He replies that he will fulfill any wish of the prince, but the latter wants to know what Spencer himself desires. No matter how harsh Raymond was with Agnes, her heart always belonged to him, and they never took it away from him. And since he wants to recover what was taken from him, he accepts the prince's proposal. The prince smiles, sure that they will succeed, because Agnes forgot all the moments when Raymond hurt her, and if he treats her better, she will surely love him again. Raymond realizes that this could be his chance to start over. As night falls over the city, Spencer heads to the princess's castle, and everything in his head gradually clears up. As the prince said, this is his chance, and he will take advantage of it to be a different person, not a copy of his father. He will not allow Agnes to suffer as his mother suffered. Raymond remembers how he promised to do whatever it took for her to breathe again, and Agnes, undoubtedly, heard him and returned to take his hand, as it always was. He saw it as a disaster, but now, under her balcony, he feels that destiny unites them. And this is just the beginning. At that moment, Agnes comes out onto the balcony and their eyes meet. Raymond only thinks about how much he longs for her to love him madly again. This time, Agnes will only remember the good things about him, and she will not allow him to leave her again. The protagonist observes Raymond for a moment and then enters the room, slamming the door shut. She doesn't understand why he is standing in the middle of the night under her balcony, staring at her. Of course, if it were Kylo doing that, Agnes would immediately go for a moonlit walk with him. But when someone she doesn't want to see is watching her, the situation becomes terrifying. The protagonist knows that Raymond was following her the day of the accident, and that he almost fought with Kylo in front of her door. But she has no idea why he is doing it. The next day, Kylo is informed that Viscount Grey wants to see him. But before he can answer, Her Highness's chamberlain says he is busy, and he must carry out an order from the princess. Kylo has noticed that, lately, people's attitude towards him has changed drastically. His daily life has become so calm that he wonders if all this is a dream. Nevertheless, every day he continues to feel the weight of responsibility, because all these changes began with her, the girl who now greets him with a sweet smile. Walking in the garden, the princess tells Grey that, according to the doctors, her health is not in danger. And although Agnes believes that Kylo contributed a lot to this, he shyly tries to deny it. When the princess points out that he is the one accompanying her, Grey replies that anyone could be in his place, and that he is nothing special. Agnes's face suddenly becomes serious, and she asks if he likes spending time with her. Thinking he has upset the princess, Kylo tries to explain that she has misunderstood him, but the girl suddenly laughs and says that Sir Grey is actually right. As he said, she can go out with whomever she wants, but not everyone makes it enjoyable. According to Agnes, she feels happy and calm by his side, and that means he is special. In reality, that is what worries Kylo. The princess has changed so much that she has strange thoughts. Perhaps, by making him believe in this fairy tale, Agnes will snatch away his illusion and plunge him into despair. Kylo believes he should not delve deeper into this whim. He understands how useless it is, that he is better than anyone else. Just as he thinks everything will return to normal and he shouldn't fool himself, Agnes touches his face. This unexpected impulse embarrasses Gray so much that he blushes immediately. Agnes smiles and explains that she had only gotten a petal on her cheek. Seeing her smile, a sudden thought crosses Kylo's mind. Agnes says that flowers suit Sir Gray very well, and he confesses that it's the first time anyone has told him that. Still embarrassed, he adds that, in his opinion, flowers would suit someone like her much better. When asked what kind of person she is, Kylo replies that he thinks she knows how to laugh out loud. This answer seems incredibly sweet to the protagonist and deeply moves her. Evidently, that idea occurred to her when she saw his smile. And since Agnes believes she needs to see him smile to know who suits it better, she asks Kylo to smile at her. Gray, who for many years has shown nothing but a forced and grim smile, does it in a very forced way. He himself realizes that it doesn't suit him at all. But Agnes, laughing, tries to convince him otherwise. But still, she wants to see a more natural expression of his emotions, so she asks him what he likes. She asks about a memorable event or food, but Kylo can't think of anything. And then Agnes, enthusiastically, promises to find something he loves. Because, according to her, she needs to see his genuine smile, whatever the cost. Unexpectedly, Kylo asks Agnes what it is that she likes. She would love to answer that she likes him. Shy, adorable, and muscular hunk. However, out loud she says she loves sweet desserts. Or something nice. When Kylo asks what she dislikes, the protagonist thinks about it. Remembering indifference and coldness, she answers that she dislikes being alone. Deciding it would be excessive to tell him her past, she tells him how she lived after her mother's death. Everyone in the palace trusted and loved the Empress, so father and servants were very sad. Agnes was small and didn't understand that her mother was gone. She thought she would sleep for a few days and come back. So, it bothered her that no one paid attention to her. Agnes wanted to play with Damien, but he shouted that she should be ashamed as her mother had died, and she only thought about games. He drove his sister away, claiming that now she had to start replacing her mother as soon as possible and take care of state affairs. The only one who comforted the princess was her nanny, who tried to explain everything to her, but soon she also passed away. Perhaps that's why Agnes attended parties so often, because every time she stayed alone, she felt those memories would consume her. Kylo knows that feeling very well, like being left alone in this world. He asks Agnes to call him anytime, not just when she needs someone to talk to, like now, but also when she needs a companion or a servant. Kylo promises to come anytime, even if he is busy, as it's the only thing someone like him can offer her. But he still wants to help her, because he also knows that feeling. Gray says this with such sincerity that the princess smiles and thanks him. They walk together into the garden, and Kylo wonders why she cares so much about him and is so happy about his simplest actions. Why does she show him her vulnerable side, the one no one else knows? He starts to doubt if that kiss was really a mistake. Kylo knows it's absurd, but the more he gets to know Agnes, the more he thinks that perhaps her feelings aren't for Raymond Spencer, but for him. A few days later, upon learning that the princess invites Gray to her chambers every day, the emperor calls him for an audience. To the question of what he thinks about the princess's health condition, Kylo replies that, in his opinion, Agnes is perfectly healthy. His Majesty is worried that his daughter is bothering the commander, but promises to reward him soon. And yet, he is concerned that rumors about Agnes might surface soon. The emperor senses that his daughter trusts Sir Gray a lot and wants to know his opinion on the matter. Kylo perfectly understands why His Majesty is asking those questions. Even if his intentions towards the princess were dubious, he wouldn't stand by idly. Kylo retorts that it is unacceptable. No one will defame Agnes, and he would lose all credibility. Raising his gaze and fixing his eyes on the emperor's, he promises that his fears are unfounded. Alexander, trusting the commander's word, dismisses him. After the emperor's questions disguised as warnings, Kylo understands something crucial. At first it was unthinkable, but even if the princess felt something for him, she is the jewel of the crown. Furthermore, she will always be the emperor's most precious possession, his most valuable treasure. And Agnes will always enjoy an impeccable reputation and the favor of high society. The princess would never ruin everything by choosing someone like him. Unthinkable. In this fleeting curiosity and small gestures, he became involved in unfounded illusions. And all this, like himself, seems incredibly pathetic to Kylo. Gray never got used to even the Imperial Palace, where he goes every day, and yesterday's meeting with the Emperor seems to pressure him even more. When Kylo approaches the princess's living room, the Chamberlain apologizes and asks him to wait in another room. According to the man, while receiving him, another guest arrived to see Her Highness. Kylo exhales with relief, as now he will have time to calm his feelings. He is about to postpone his visit until tomorrow when he suddenly finds out that Sir Spencer has come to see the princess. And he stops abruptly. The head of the Order of the White Knights couldn't know that Agnes calls Kylo every day at this time. So why did he suddenly come right now? Meanwhile, Raymond asks to be told that Her Highness needs to speak with him. Upon learning that Spencer has come to see her, the protagonist asks for him to be dismissed, since she already has an appointment for today. But the commander of the White Knights begged to tell Agnes that he would wait for her until she met with him. The princess gets furious, as she went to great lengths with her makeup, hairstyle, and outfit to go boating with Kylo. And now, the perfect look she wanted to show her beloved, she will have to show to another man. After thinking for a moment, the heroine decides to ask Sir Grey to wait in another lounge, and orders tea with desserts to be brought to him. She, for her part, goes to quickly listen to Raymond and will return, without ruining her mood, before seeing Kylo. The maids promise the princess that they will kick Sir Spencer out immediately if they hear any rudeness from him. However, when Raymond appears at the door, he looks so dazzling that those words instantly disappear from her memory. And although Spencer is not at all to her liking, the heroine cannot deny his undeniable physical attractiveness. Raymond thanks the princess for answering his request and for dedicating her time to him. Because she liked him when she was young, seeing his face, she still feels an unpleasant pang in her heart. The protagonist hits her chest, trying to calm that sensation. Noticing that strange movement, Raymond suggests calling the butler, but Agnes assures him she is fine. Turning to the maids, Sir Grey asks the girls to leave them alone with the princess. To the heroine's surprise, they obeyed his request quite quickly, and laughing, disappeared behind the door. Deciding to deal with them later, Agnes thanks Spencer for finding her on the way and bringing her to the palace. Without taking his eyes off the princess, Raymond replies that there is nothing to thank him for. Agnes feels pressured by Spencer's fixed gaze and decides to say that staring at a lady is quite rude. Raymond apologizes, stating that he was only looking out of concern for her health, and then the princess asks him to explain why he came. Since she has plans, those words slightly baffle Spencer, and he answers that he wanted to make sure she was well. Agnes reminds him that official visits are prohibited in the palace for the time being. But Raymond, with sudden certainty, claims the right to see her without official permission. Crossing his arms ironically, the protagonist asks what right gives him that authority, if he is not her fiancé. However, Spencer replies with something Agnes did not expect at all. According to him, he was just planning to get engaged to her. Just by looking at Agnes's cold eyes, one can understand many things. Raymond doesn't know why he waited until she forgot him, nor if he realized how beautiful she is before. The heroine says she doesn't remember they planned to get engaged, since, according to others, their relationship wasn't going well lately. Raymond assures her it was a misunderstanding, and that Agnes shouldn't listen to what others say. The protagonist reminds Sir Spencer of the night he looked into her eyes under her bedroom balcony. The princess wants to know why he was spying on her and what he would have said if she had called the guard. Raymond says he came because he was worried about her. Protecting the imperial family and the palace is his duty. Therefore, he begs Her Highness to understand him. Spencer looks so unhinged saying that the protagonist is afraid to even move. Agnes decides to ask him to leave, as, like she already told him, she has matters to attend to. To his promise to visit her again, the princess replies that it is not necessary. She will call him if she needs him, but until then she asks him not to show up again. Alone, the protagonist sighs in relief, as Spencer scared her a lot. She tries to remember if in the original novel there were episodes where Raymond showed madness. It turns out that Kylo never went to the other lounge, and he has been standing at the door the whole time. Upon leaving the room, Spencer bumps into Grey again, surprised to see him there. Kylo snaps at his rival that Her Highness calls him daily, but he is intrigued why Raymond visits the princess, as he used to treat her like a leech, and his current attitude worries him. According to Spencer, Grey doesn't get something, but he is willing to explain it to him. Raymond advises Kylo not to fool himself into believing that Her Highness calls them for the same reason, since he knows better than anyone that it is impossible. Gray mentally calls Spencer a bastard, as he already knows everything without him reminding him. This whole time, he himself has tried not to fantasize about something incredible. However, Kylo does not want Raymond to discover the feeling overflowing him. Leaning over him, he asks Spencer mockingly, why does he think that? Since it's not that impossible. According to him, the princess does not remember Raymond and only calls him every day. Kylo would rather die than see Agnes fall in love with that idiot again. And that's why he asks why Spencer is so sure that he won't be able to seduce Her Highness. A heated argument breaks out in front of the Chamberlain, who fears a scandal. It turns out Agnes was watching everything from behind the door. She wanted to ask about Kylo, but she never imagined witnessing such a scene. The heroine fights the urge to burst in and ask how Kylo intends to seduce her. Lost in her fantasy, the princess sighs so heavily that the Chamberlain hears her. But he is not the only one. Kylo and Raymond see the slightly open door and the princess, stunned. Not knowing what to do, the protagonist only manages to give a silly smile. Kylo, realizing she heard everything, turns red as a tomato. He can't believe he let that nonsense slip out in front of the princess, whom he might like. Raymond bows to Her Highness and leaves, while Kylo remains there, mortified with embarrassment. Spencer's words got under his skin, and now he wonders how to justify himself. After a silence, Agnes suggests to Sir Grey that he first accompany her to her place. Sitting opposite the princess, Kylo asks if she heard everything from the beginning. Staring at him coldly, Agnes replies affirmatively. Grey is sure she is furious, but he didn't tell the truth. He just didn't want to lose to Spencer. He was trying to be kind, but Raymond decided to cross the line. Kylo trembles, because due to his inferiority complex, he showed his petty and pathetic side. Right in front of the person who shouldn't see him, and now the princess will never call him again. Her warm gaze, her touches, and her smile made him believe in an illusion. But now it's over. Then Kylo says he wasn't honest, and that he said all that just to provoke that idiot Spencer. And although all this is just excuses, he wants the princess to forgive him for it. Seeing Kyle like this, Agnes finds him even more adorable than he already is. Some will say Grey has an inferiority complex, but the heroine likes that about him, because having an inferiority complex also means the desire to move forward. And although Kyle envied Raymond and kept cursing him, he recognizes his flaws. Just like by sacrificing himself, he saved countless people. Of course, the heroine liked this character even before the end. But perhaps this is what people call destiny, what brought them together. That's why the moment Kyle admits his mistakes is so beautiful to her. Smiling, the heroine asks Grey if that means he is not going to seduce her. She wants to know why his seduction is a provocation for Sir Spencer. Yes, for her information, Raymond hates her. According to Kylo, he also believed that. But observing his behavior lately, he starts to think differently. These words impact the protagonist, as she believed Spencer couldn't feel anything for her. Looking down, Kylo confesses that, even if Raymond feels nothing for the princess, he feels like she has been stolen from him. According to him, the more insignificant the person, the more difficult the situation. In that case, Agnes asks if Sir Spencer will be even more annoyed if she becomes friendlier with Kyle. Grey assumes that probably that will be the case. The protagonist smiles and suggests that in that case, that is exactly what they will do. Her reaction completely baffles Kylo, since, theoretically, the princess should be angry with him now. However, she, smiling, declares that, although she doesn't understand why, for some reason she thinks she will like it if they annoy Raymond. Agnes thinks that Sir Grey also wants it, although Kylo instinctively wants to stay away from the princess. In the end, he cannot refuse her when he looks her in the eyes. And he believed in that absurd hope that this bond would last forever. Without taking his eyes off Agnes, Grey accepts her proposal as if hypnotized. The protagonist is incredibly happy, as a short while ago she wanted to hit Raymond, and now she would even reward him for bringing her closer to Kylo. Furthermore, the court doctors examined Agnes and ruled that, apart from memory loss, she is completely healthy. Now the princess has permission to receive visitors and leave the palace. However, the first official visit turned out to be quite strange. In front of Agnes sits the protagonist of the original story, who inexplicably bursts into tears. According to Lady Devon, she was worried and wished to visit Her Highness, but her little brother fell ill. The heroine remembers that, obviously, they are referring to that brother, the one they say is very handsome. And he is sick. Anyway, many people changed their attitude towards her in a year, but she didn't expect Hazel to be one of them. Although, to be honest, Devon and she were talking about Agnes rejecting Raymond, and they didn't interact much. And now, Hazel asks her if it's true that Her Highness doesn't remember Mr. Spencer. Really? Now Agnes understands the reason for her visit, but calmly replies that she has no reason to lie about that. The heroine didn't manage to understand why Hazel was crying before, and bam, the tears dry instantly, radiating happiness. Noticing that her exaggerated reaction made Agnes uncomfortable, Devon justified it with the joy over the princess's help. Thinking the topic is settled, Her Highness suggests ending the meeting, and Hazel says goodbye with a curtsy. Alone, the heroine holds her head, not understanding why all the characters have gone completely crazy. If everything goes according to her plans, she will end up with Gray, but Raymond and Hazel, for some reason, won't leave her alone. The rain beats against the glass roof of the greenhouse in the garden, where Agnes and Kylo are playing chess. The protagonist cannot manage to win even one game and loses again, but Gray is sure that he lets her win. Barely on the second day of their agreement for good coexistence, Agnes has already discovered many new things about Kylo. For example, he is very good at conversation, sometimes cracks jokes to cheer you up, and even mimics your way of speaking. Possibly, his original roughness was because he never interacted with anyone the way he does with her. The protagonist loves thinking that Kylo opened up and showed himself like this, precisely to her. In the original story, nothing was known about this character, except that he was humiliated, and he fled the Grey Mansion. Therefore, determined to know more about him, the girl asks him how he decided to become a mercenary. Kylo gets embarrassed, fearing that the lady will find listening to that topic unpleasant. The princess smiles understandingly, regretting that they haven't yet reached the point of talking about those things. Suddenly, she hears that the rain has stopped and realizes that time flew by unnoticed. Kyle gets up and apologizes. He has matters to attend to, and Agnes promises to send him a carriage tomorrow at the same time. Leaving the greenhouse, Gray reflects on how, after losing her memory, the princess has completely transformed. Maybe that's why he himself feels different when he is near her. Is it possible? For the first time, Kyle felt important, not just a statusless mercenary, but in reality, he is just a scoundrel, capable of anything just to survive. He thinks Agnes would be disappointed if she knew his past, and that's why he hasn't told her anything. Her innocence and affection make him feel like he is deceiving and using her. How terrible. But he wants to keep feeling that warmth he has experienced for the first time, convincing himself that nothing bad is happening. However, the next day, the princess asks him to relay to Kyle that it is not necessary for him to visit her today. A bolt of lightning seems to strike the man upon hearing those words. He doesn't understand why Agnes suddenly doesn't want to see him. Did she get tired of being with him? Maybe he went too far and made a mistake. Or she realized how low his behavior was in front of Spencer. Kyle reminds himself, once again, that the princess hated him from the start. And if he also felt nothing, why is he so worried now that it's hard for him to even breathe? Believing he ruined everything again, Kylo sadly assumes that today he won't be able to see her. Not long before, Emma burst into the princess's room, shouting that they had a big problem. His Majesty has ordered that every time Her Highness leaves the palace, she must be accompanied by knights. The protagonist was shocked to learn that now, on every date with Kylo, there would be someone else with them. But that wasn't all. An even bigger problem arose. Demian decided to appoint Sir Spencer to that post. Upon hearing that, the heroine begged Emma to tell Sir Grey as soon as possible not to come today. Anger towards her brother consumed Agnes, and she was ready to go see him and tear him to pieces at that moment. Demian goes to his father to inform him that, from now on, Raymond Spencer will be the princess's personal knight. Until now, that position had been vacant, since Agnes was not convinced by his status or his skills. However, all this was just excuses, as everyone knows the problem is that none of them were Raymond Spencer. Furthermore, according to the prince, if status and skills were really evaluated, there would be no better candidate. The emperor reminds his son that Sir Clifford from the elite of the Golden Knights is still there, who is not far behind. Demian suggests to his father to imagine how soon Clifford would start being called a stubborn old man. The emperor clearly remembers that Raymond himself refused to accompany Agnes, but the prince replies that it doesn't matter. According to him, Spencer was shocked by the incident that happened to the princess. Now he is kinder to Agnes and willing to do anything for her. The emperor thinks that, in that case, it is an even bigger problem. Damien understands that his father is worried about Raymond and Agnes getting married. However, he wants to know if the emperor is worried about his daughter, or if it's just his personal aversion to Sir Spencer. Before Alexander can respond to his son's biting remark, they announce Her Highness's visit. When Agnes enters the room, the first thing the emperor does is ask about her well-being. The princess replies that her condition has improved a lot and immediately gets to the point. She confesses that she heard a rumor that her brother insists that Sir Raymond escort her. The emperor confirms it, adding that he considers Sir Clifford the best candidate for that position. His Majesty wants to know Agnes's own opinion on the matter. And then the heroine blurts out that if either of these two approaches her, she won't leave her room starting tomorrow. She says that what she felt for Sir Spencer before now only repulses her. And Sir Clifford, whatever Agnes does, will surely lecture her, so she'd better become a nun. The monastery is a bunker, no weddings, and not even royalty enters without permission. The heroine reminds her father that when she rejected all the knights, he promised to let her choose whomever she wanted. The prince and the emperor freeze, trembling at hearing the name of Agnes's new favorite. Panic becomes reality, because the princess asks for Sir Kylo Grey to be her personal knight. The emperor, trembling with fear, asks his daughter if she feels anything for that man. Agnes smiles and tells His Majesty not to worry, and there the father breathes a sigh of relief. According to the princess, everyone knows Kylo saved her life, and rewarding him is logical, but a title would anger the nobles. Listening to his sister, Damien cannot believe she is the same girl who couldn't talk about politics a moment ago. Meanwhile, Agnes finishes her idea, saying that being the princess's knight is a great example of how loyalty is rewarded, regardless of rank. Repeating what his sister said about rewarding loyalty, Damien nods, but with a somewhat strange smile. He claims that, following that logic, Raymond should be her knight, as he rescued her after the accident in front of everyone. Damien suggests that the knights share the escort days. Spencer would have 4 days and Grey 3. Because although Sir Kay saved the princess, it was because of his fault, so it would be fair to give Raymond more days. Agnes agrees with her brother, but remembers she must apologize to Sir Grey for insulting him because of his origin. According to the princess, it is her chance to ask forgiveness for how she acted and show everyone that she has changed. And if her brother is worried about her reputation, he should do what she asks. Damien, amazed at how much Agnes has learned to reason, gives up and offers to give Grey 5 days. And 2 to Spencer. The heroine, of course, hates not having Kylo all week, but she understands her brother given their situation. Agnes and Damien shake hands, sealing their agreement. But they completely forget that someone important has not yet given their approval. However, the next day, the Emperor appoints Raymond Spencer and Kylo Grey as personal knights to Her Highness. The news that these two would be her personal guard spread like wildfire in one day. People appreciated that Kylo Grey was rewarded, despite his origin. Some were not happy, but the rumors made most view him favorably. And among those who erupted in fury upon hearing this was the Viscount Austen Grey. There has been real chaos in the Grey mansion since early this morning. Benjamin and Bradley shout at the same time that Kylo is plotting something dark. Because he continues to ignore them, his father smokes in silence, listening to their assumptions. But the sons beg him to say something. They want to know if he will do anything. They don't understand. Will the Viscount defend Kyle, even though he ignored his words? Unable to take it anymore, Austen tells them to shut up, as his head is already a mess. His wife sits nearby and silently wipes away her tears with a handkerchief. The Viscount doesn't understand why he has to endure these accusations when Kyle became famous without his help. For his reputation's sake, even nobles Austen recently met show favoritism towards Kyle, and those whom the Viscount really wants to get close to only distance themselves from him. On top of that, no matter how much Austen tries to meet his illegitimate son, the latter ignores his attempts. The Viscount is angered that Kyle, apparently, forgot thanks to whom he became the princess's personal knight. If he had already earned her trust, he should have introduced his brothers to her immediately. Upon seeing the order to become the princess's personal knight, Kylo can't believe it. That day he said terrible things in front of Raymond Spencer, and Agnes heard everything. Apparently, she accepted Kylo's apologies, but then stopped calling him, disappointed. At one point, he even thought she hated him. But her sweet tone, her gaze, and expression made him see a totally different person. It was as if, suddenly, she had transformed into someone worthy of respect. Kylo was distressed by the thought of never seeing the adorable Princess Agnes again. He tried to control himself not to run to beg for forgiveness, like a beggar. But the next day, suddenly, emissaries arrived with the decree for Grey. Kylo couldn't believe the princess forgot his mistake and treated him as before, and that he would see that look again. He tries to remember from when he started caring about Agnes, if it was from the accident, or even before. Kylo tries to understand how his feelings can change, if it's possible, and if he really wants to change them. At the same time, Raymond Spencer receives an identical appointment letter. However, upon reading the decree, he grits his teeth with overflowing rage. Raymond does not remember having worried about Kylo Grey even once until this moment. But recently he learned that, due to the princess's favor, he harbors certain illusions. Raymond found it laughable and pitiful that he could imagine something like that. Out of pity, he even warned Kylo. But this idiot ignored everything and crossed the line. Raymond had no reason to fear that, because it simply couldn't happen. Agnes would never stoop so low as to love a bastard of the nobility. Even so, at that moment, strangely enough, his heart raced. Since childhood, Agnes felt an unrequited love for Raymond, a destiny she couldn't escape. Even though the princess lost her memories of him, Spencer never imagined it would come to this. But Agnes's heart, which always belonged to him, suddenly vanished. And even with Kyle's company, Grey got 5 days while Raymond only 2. Although he accepts it, because now his priority is to win back Agnes's heart. Raymond swears to himself that he will succeed. Whatever it takes. Lord Grey waits for the princess next to the carriage. She comes out and tells him that the new uniform suits him very well. The joy of reuniting with her completely floods him, and he thanks Agnes without taking his eyes off her. The heroine smiles and extends her hand to Kylo, saying she is happy to collaborate with him. Kneeling before her, the knight swears to fulfill his duties. Protecting the greatness of the imperial family, he promises to serve the princess with all his soul, with devotion and loyalty, and he is about to kiss her hand. At that moment, a memory of that nocturnal kiss crosses Kylo's mind, and he freezes. Perhaps that day she was drunk and mistook him for Raymond, but now that she is sober, will he object to her kissing him? Meanwhile, the heroine admires Kylo in his new attire. What suits him so well? She is incredibly proud of herself for achieving what she wanted so much. Kylo, after kissing the princess's hand, is glad he didn't provoke unpleasant feelings in her. Taking him by the arm, Agnes declares they have to go somewhere together. Under a high hill near the imperial castle, there is a forest surrounding a large lake, a rare picturesque landscape in the capital. It is within the royal castle and only opens to the public on specific days. And according to the protagonist, it is simply the perfect place for a date. For a moment, Agnes and Kylo stand by the lake, observing the bright and fascinating surface of the water. Then, the heroine sits on a bench under a blooming cherry tree and suggests Grey sit next to her. Looking at the chamberlains behind them, Kylo also sits on the bench. The protagonist leans back, enjoying a strange breeze that, although cool, is still warm. Realizing he is staring too much at the princess, Kylo moves away embarrassed. Agnes admires the view before her. It's the first time she has seen such a beautiful landscape. She never had the chance to enjoy a landscape so peacefully before. Neither in her past life, nor this one had she experienced such a feeling of freedom and peace. Suddenly, the princess turns to Lord Grey and tells him she is very sorry. She sincerely begs for forgiveness for having despised and insulted him so many times in the past. Agnes promises never to do it again and begs him to accept her apologies. In reality, the heroine always saw herself, unintentionally, as someone living by the rules of the original, different from who she is now. But over time, she understood that, even if she didn't have control, the mistakes she made in the past didn't disappear. And now it's time to return to the traces left behind. To the question of whether he can forgive her, Kylo, with his head bowed, replies yes. Looking at him, the heroine thinks about how soft and attentive this man really is, who seems so harsh and thorny. The Kylo she knows is like this, and that's why Agnes will strive to surround him with good people in the future. Just as she didn't feel lonely thanks to him, he won't be alone thanks to her either. The wind turned somewhat cold, and the princess suggests Lord Grey come down. He follows her, mulling over everything that just happened. It was the first time someone had apologized to Kylo. It gets harder and harder for him to look at Princess Agnes, her soft cheeks, and round, her lips, her soft and calm voice, and her eyes that curve when she smiles. All these details are so charming that Kylo can barely contain his feelings. These sensations, which he never experienced before, intensify with every look at her. If he doesn't control himself and clenches his fists, he feels like he could approach her, hug her, and kiss her without further ado. And Gray simply doesn't know how to deal with these emotions. Sitting in her room, the protagonist hugs her teddy bear, which reminds her of her beloved. She doesn't know what to do all day, since Kylo won't come today. A knock is heard at the door, and the Chamberlain announces a guest for Her Highness. It turns out that Lord Sirius Melville, of the Order of the White Knights, wishes to meet with the princess. The protagonist doesn't understand why the White Knights visit her so often, when Hazel Devon came recently. After getting ready, Agnes goes down to the reception hall, where Melville is waiting for her. He heard that Her Highness suffered a serious injury, and he wants to make sure she is well. The princess assures him that she already feels fine and thanks him for his concern. Furthermore, Sirius also heard the rumor about Agnes's partial memory loss. And while the protagonist says it's true, he takes a ring out of his jacket pocket and asks her to accept it. The princess trembles, not understanding what Sirius is doing. And then Melville, regretfully, confesses that, hard as it may be to believe, now only she has a place in his heart. After the last ball, Sirius suddenly found himself on a long mission, which he left in a great hurry. While listening to a soldier in the camp bragging about his fiancée, forgotten memories resurfaced in his mind. A long time ago, Sirius also had a fiancée, and although his family chose her for him, he sincerely loved her. And she was his first love. But she turned out not to be what she seemed at first. The young woman left Melville, and, having fallen in love with another aristocrat, unilaterally broke off the engagement at a ball. Her betrayal left a deep wound in Sirius's soul. As a result, it became difficult for him to give his heart completely to one person. Upon learning that, because he sent Sir Spencer on the princess's first mission, where she got injured, Sirius realized he couldn't stop thinking about her. Her injury reminded him of his own pain, and that feeling was very familiar to him. But soon, Sirius realized that it had all been an illusion. He expected Agnes to suffer, unable to escape Raymond, but she appeared radiant. Unlike him, who wandered and suffered from his own injury for so long. Agnes recovered quickly and, true to her convictions, moved on. It was then that Sirius understood that he admired that Agnes. In the end, Melville felt he had completely lost his mind and fell in love. When he understood his feelings and returned from the mission, his heart ached upon hearing it from the princess. But the most shocking news was that Raymond Spencer no longer existed in her memory. Sirius believed that heaven was helping him, and as soon as he was allowed, he rushed to see Agnes. Melville begs Her Highness to accept his feelings, but she jumps up and interrupts him. Trying to stop all this, the heroine bluntly replies that she doesn't want any of that. Seeing the confusion on Sirius's face, she clarifies that he is not her type at all. In reality, Melville was always sure that outwardly he had nothing to envy Raymond for. After all, he is attractive enough to conquer all the women in the capital. Not knowing what else to invent to justify her rejection, the heroine declares that she does not wish to marry an impure man. Sirius leaves the princess's chambers as if he had been bathed in sewage. He looks so dejected that his companions don't recognize him at all. Diana Raynox, also suffering from her unrequited love, tries to comfort her friend. And only Hazel Devon, sitting with them, seems to be plotting something, lost in thought. Since it is Raymond's turn to escort the princess today, she decides to spend the day reading, without leaving her room, and asks not to be disturbed. Upon leaving Her Highness's chambers, Chloe and Emma relay the order to the Chamberlain. Upon hearing this, Raymond, waiting for his first day in office outside the door, clenches his fists in rage. The protagonist leans back in her chair, exhausted. During the week, she devoted herself to attending pre-selected TESS events with noble ladies. To be precise, Agnes was improving Kyle's reputation among them. Thanks to this, the ladies began to discuss what kind of son-in-law Gray would be, something they hadn't even considered before. It was definitely a change for the better. The heroine worried that someone might suspect something between her and Kyle, but her anxiety was in vain. No matter how well she spoke of Gray, no one imagined that the princess could have romantic feelings for him, because Agnes always openly showed her love. When she liked Raymond, she clung to him like a burr. Many even thought the princess would end up marrying him, but now, The protagonist doesn't even know whether to be happy that they aren't suspecting her and Kylo. Deep down, as long as Kylo's reputation isn't affected, it's fine for things to stay the same. After all, these days won't last long anyway, because very soon there will be a breakup, and the preparations for war will begin. In this way, both personal knights assigned to the princess will return to their posts. However, the great war they expect will not happen, as the protagonist will destroy the source of discord. The next day, Damien appeared in the princess's chambers early in the morning. He suggests to his sister that they go on a picnic after so long. He is free today and came to spend time with Agnes, like an older brother. When the princess was little, she always followed him and asked to play, so Damien will be surprised if she refuses. Despite Agnes's attempts to dissuade him because of the rain, he insists and asks her to get ready. The heroine agrees, as ignoring the crown prince would damage her reputation, which she took so much effort to rebuild. She will have to spend some time with Damien out of courtesy and return to her chambers as soon as possible. When the princess leaves the room, Raymond is already waiting for her behind the door. All her attempts to avoid this encounter turned out to be useless in the end. Damien is already next to the carriage, hurrying his sister. This surprises Agnes, as she thought they would just sit in the palace garden. The prince convinces the heroine that it's not far and she has no choice but to get into the carriage. Raymond is sitting opposite, but she avoids his gaze and keeps looking out the window. Spencer thinks about how he can be so close and yet seems so distant. Before, Agnes invaded his personal space without asking permission. She would appear out of nowhere. She would take his hand and beg him to walk together, whispering in his ear. And although all this horribly irritated Raymond, it was what he had gotten used to. At the time, it seemed annoying to him, but now he feels that if she is not close, he will go crazy. What he desires most is to force Agnes to look at him. And powerless, Spencer only clenches his fist. Suddenly, the protagonist realizes that her brother won't even get into the carriage. He waves to his sister and wishes them a good time together. Before the princess can do anything, the carriage sets off. Agnes cannot believe that damned Damien tricked her and sent her on a picnic with Raymond. Breaking the oppressive silence, Spencer asks Her Highness what book she was reading yesterday. Agnes believes she is not obliged to report to him on such a personal matter. However, Raymond replies that, as her future fiancé, he has the right to ask such questions. Crossing her arms hostilely, the heroine declares that she doesn't know what she was like in the past. But now she has no memories or feelings for him. Therefore, Sir Spencer should leave the past behind and realize the present as soon as possible. Moreover, she finds it extremely unpleasant that he allows himself the rudeness of calling himself her fiancé every time, and she expects him to refrain from such expressions in the future. The heroine understands that this might have sounded rude. However, in any other way, her message would hardly have reached him. Raymond lowers his head, clenching his fingers into a fist. The carriage approaches a large forest, located not far from the capital, on the outskirts of the empire. Deep in the forest, there is a large lake, where aristocrats often have picnics. However, Raymond stopped the coachman not precisely at that lake. He took Agnes to a pond, where they used to go play together as children. The heroine sees Spencer's intentions instantly, although she didn't expect a picnic in this weather. Raymond offers Agnes a seat. She drops onto the blanket spread on the ground and sighs. He tries to remind the princess how they used to come here together when they were children. Nevertheless, the heroine replies that she remembers the place, but he is not in those memories. According to Raymond, in her childhood, Her Highness loved this pond. It was because of rumors that, on rainy days, a frog fairy appeared here. In Agnes's memory, the day Raymond suddenly became cold towards her still shines. They put on their cloaks and waited a long time at the pond for the frog fairy to appear. The fairy never appeared, but they did get soaked in the rain and ran around laughing. Raymond is going to tell Agnes about that day, but she doesn't understand if she should listen to stories she doesn't remember. Interrupting him halfway, the heroine gets up and heads to the carriage, claiming it is very cold. Spencer remains seated on the cold ground, staring fixedly at a point in the distance. Suddenly, he had the impression that Agnes had just guessed what he was about to say. Raymond wonders if she really understood that he was going to talk about his mother. After a whirlwind of ideas, Spencer suddenly realizes that Agnes is lying when she says she forgot. However, he cannot understand why she does it, nor if there is any reason to pretend and lie. Suddenly, it occurs to Raymond that, in that way, the princess might be giving him a chance to escape without guilt and be free, the opportunity to choose another without remorse, hiding behind her amnesia. This could mean that Agnes still loves him, and he was only leaving deep wounds in the heart of the one who cared for him so sincerely. If so, Raymond is no different from his father, who rejected his wife his whole life and hurt her. Now Spencer must reciprocate Agnes, and he will not stupidly lose her again. With these thoughts, he gets up from the ground and heads to the carriage under the torrential rain. The next day, Kylo prepares to escort the princess. On the way to her, the words Agnes told him in their last encounter echoed in his head again and again. He remembers how she sincerely asked his forgiveness for her previous insults and contempt towards him. Since then, those words have not stopped echoing in his memory. But as he passes through the hallway, he unintentionally overhears the maids gossiping that the princess and Sir Raymond had a date alone over the weekend. Kylo slows down and listens to how Agnes and Spencer spent time together in the rain. What is she plotting? Meanwhile, the crown prince calls Raymond because he heard the rumor that the picnic was a disaster. And although Demian thought his friend would be sad, fortunately, he doesn't seem to be. Could he be hiding something? The prince asks if he is well informed that the princess is accompanied by Sir Grey today. Why such insistence? After receiving an affirmative answer, he takes an envelope out of his vest pocket, which must be delivered to Agnes. In the envelope are 2 tickets for a performance by the Imperial Company. What could all this mean? Originally, Demian was going there with Diana, but he is so busy that he decided to give the tickets to his sister. The prince wants Raymond to give the envelope to Agnes and accompany her to the show. Could it be a trap? Spencer leaves Damien's office with a good feeling, happy because luck has smiled upon him so quickly. Meanwhile, the protagonist suggests to Kylo that they go on a picnic. Taking advantage of this sunny day, Grey knows he must pay attention to what Her Highness says. But it's as if he doesn't hear her. The rumors about Agnes's date with Spencer keep tormenting him. He tries to imagine what they did together, where they were, and why they were alone. Just then, a servant announces Sir Spencer's visit to the princess. Agnes asks for him to be refused, but the chamberlain reports that Raymond brings an urgent message from the prince. The princess agrees to receive him briefly, and Kylo's heart skips a beat. Raymond enters and apologizes for bothering them, explaining that he brings an item from the prince. The protagonist is dying to know what forced Spencer to show up like this. Raymond reveals that they are tickets for the Imperial Company's play, and the prince ordered them to attend together. Agnes interrupts him abruptly and apologizes, saying it won't happen today. She appreciates her brother's care, but must refuse, as she already has plans with Sir Grey. Raymond insists, astonished that Agnes rejects the crown prince's will. Extending his hand to the princess with a smile, he advises her to hurry. The carriage is waiting. The heroine glares at Spencer, trying to figure out how to get rid of him once and for all. Kylo watches the scene for a while, his lips pressed into a thin line. Suddenly, he stands up and, full of determination, silently approaches Raymond. Understanding nothing, Spencer orders him to step aside, as he is speaking with Her Highness. At first, Grey thought there might be something between the princess and that man, but her indifference towards Raymond made it clear that they were only unilateral attentions. Spencer might deserve respect, but Kylo will not allow him to complicate Agnes's life. Today Grey is Her Highness's personal night. He informs Raymond that the princess has rejected the proposal. Insisting is very impolite on Spencer's part. As a knight, he must respect the princess's opinion. The heroine watches with admiration how reliable Kylo has suddenly become, but she fears that Grey's reputation will be affected by his disobedience to the prince. Agnes unexpectedly changes her mind. Kylo's confidence vanishes in an instant. He turns to the princess, trying to understand what is happening. Agnes smiles and adds that she has one condition. Lord Grey must accompany them. Now both men look at the princess, sunk in the most absolute confusion.